Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a very special At the Table experience. My name is Chris Ramsey, and we are joined by international mentalist sensation, Mr. Peter Turner, all the way from the UK. Let's give him a round of applause. Yeah. Peter, very good to have you here. If you're not familiar, which I'm sure you are familiar with Peter Turner's work, Peter's very famous for consulting, creating magic, and really powerful mentalism and mind-reading effects. I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent. Later on, we're going to have a Q&A session. So for all of those of you who are tuned in right now, if you want to prop your questions, if you want to send them our way via either Skype or Messenger, we'll be answering those while we go through. But if it's something that we're not talking about, we'll keep those to a Q&A section at the end. So be sure to have some questions ready for the end, and we'll get to those afterwards. Is that cool? All right, Peter, thank you so much for joining us. It's such an honor and a pleasure.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for hosting this. It certainly means a lot. So yeah, how are you feeling? I'm
feeling great, man. I'm really stoked to be here. I'm really glad you're here. This is a bit of a wild ride. I mean, all the way from Canada, UK, to California.
It's been quite a trip.
Yeah.
For those who are watching right now, please forgive my inanimate nature. I've been bitten by a brown recluse spider, so I'd normally be up and running about and more animate than I normally am. I would be normally more animate, but I'm not going to be able to because the leg's eating itself slowly.
I've got these big comfy couches to lay back on, so
just
taken care of.
Just to mirror what Chris said, if you have a question at home or in the studio that you'd like to ask, please ask it, because there might be people that don't have the confidence that you have, and it'd be a real shame for that question not to be asked, just because somebody felt underconfident in a sense to ask the question.
Sure,
so please do ask.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's it.
So Peter, I'm really truly stoked. I mean, I've been hanging out with you for the past few days. I met you for the first time at Blackpool, and you blew me away with everything you showed me. It like really blew my mind. And these past few days, I've got to see a little bit of what you do, so I'm really excited. To get things started as sort of an intro, is there any way you could talk about perhaps your background or how you got into mentalism, how you got into magic, perhaps, just for the people that don't know that background story?
Yes, so essentially I got into magic when I was 4 or 5 years old, and it was Christmas Day. And on Christmas Day, I'm sat and Lance Burton comes on at the television. And this beautifully dressed guy walks out onto the stage with his Victorian lamppost with a silk around his neck. And I sat back and I'm like, whoa. And this guy started producing doves, appearing and disappearing candles and canes. And my mind was blown, the hairs on the back of my head back of my neck was standing up, and I was just completely in awe. And I was like,
best dove act. It really is.
I was just mind blown, I'd seen a lot of things. At 4 years old, 5 years old, your imagination's incredible anyway. But to have your complete world blown open by somebody on screen in just a few seconds, it completely got me inspired. And at that point, I made a life commitment that this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. I'm going to be surrounded by this. I'm going to immerse myself in this. And hopefully one day, I'll be just like this guy, And from there, I'm from a very poor background, so a lot of people don't know that. In England, we call them council estates, but the ghetto. I never had any money, so that meant I couldn't buy props, I couldn't buy cards, I couldn't go out and buy books. So I could only really replicate the things that I'd seen on TV, or I could create in my own mind. So I used to use everyday objects that I could find, and I'd slowly steal things away and hide them. And I'd perform using everyday objects, and I'd go to school and I'd show the kids at school tricks, and I was doing things like book tests, but not mentalism style book tests, just using words in books to do things with, and just small things, taking my thumb off, ridiculous things really. And Mr. Buckle were a supply teacher that came to the school, and he saw how enthralled I was by magic, and he brought me a deck of cards. He brought me a deck of cards and showed me my first card trick, and that were it. I were off. I had that deck of cards for so long that they probably looked like sidewalk slabs or paving slabs by the time they were like a book. It were like carrying
we call them poop decks.
Yeah, we're like carrying another school book. But yeah, I just created and performed my creations. The very first show I ever did was at 6 years old, when a family friend had a christening, and there were like a joint christening between my little sister Bethany and their son as well. So they said, you know, should we get some entertainment? And I got paid £10 to go and perform at this christening. And it were all stuff that I'd created. So my own creations
Wow.
at 6 years old, performing live, and I were being paid for it. And my dad's friends were like, oh, he's not actually that bad, you know, for his age. And so I think they were very forgiving, but still...
As you would be for a 6-year-old performing mentalism acts with original effects. I mean,
It was
impressive.
there were more sort of magic, like with ropes, and I did
Sure,
like
okay.
a miser's dream. I used to
Really?
I
Wow.
had this Queensbury. I stole this Queensbury rules tin from my nan's. Like she had like a little haberdashery where she'd keep sewing stuff, and I saw this little tin. And I used to be like, yeah, it make noise. And my auntie Dell once told a joke. We'd gone to church, and she was telling me that when they were kids, what they used to do is when they took the like a tray that goes around that they put money in, like a donations tray. What she used to do is she used to tap the bottom of it and pretend to drop a coin, so it looked like they'd put money in it and then they'd pass it on, right? So the concept of that for me was just mind blowing, and so I just used to do the same thing with this little tin, and I used to just pretend to pull it through the air and just drop it from here. I never knew that were already a created effect. I never knew it was called Miser's Dream. I just used to do it, you know. I
Great
used to
minds
do
think alike.
That's it. I used to cut a rope up and restore it. So, you know, tear paper up and restore paper. And these were all things that I thought I'd created. And about 11 years old, we went down to the Peace Hall, and that's in Halifax. It's a little town that's just next to my village. And my nan had taken me down there. I never lived with my mum or dad. And as we were walking through this little market stall, there's one stall that stood out. It's a magic stall, and I see this guy stood pitching magic, and we went over. I said, please, can we go over? And she's like, you know I hate magic. I don't want to go near it. And I said, just come on, please. You know, it means a lot. So we went over to this stall, and there's this guy, you know, doing card tricks, and he showed me a card trick. And I didn't have social etiquette. I still don't now, but back then it were even worse. And I said, yeah, that's great, but it'd be better if you did it this way. And I'd never seen the trick before, and I performed it back to him, and I cut the compromise down, and he sat and he sort of smiled, and he never took it as offence, but he must have seen something in me, because he started chatting with my nan. My nan sent me away. I had to go, you know, stand a few feet away whilst they chatted, and he said, she come over and she said, do you think you'd be able to catch a bus from Queensbury to Halifax? And I was like, yeah, why? And she says, because you've just been offered a job. So let me just go talk it out. So they talked it out.
That's so great.
I know it was. So for me, my heart was beating. You know, my first job was on my first actual job was on a magic stall. So.
Have you ever written any of this somewhere? Has this ever been told anywhere, like in a book?
I've touched upon it briefly in passages, but I tried to sort of just flower over it, because I find it
It's
very
great. It's something worthy of a movie script. It sounds amazing.
Well, it's only very tiny, but there's some other crazy stories, you know, that I could get into. And you've spent a few days with me. You know what I'm like. I don't go to hospitals if I need something doing. I'll do it myself. I do my own surgery, and I'm like that. I'm very much. I live a strange lifestyle in comparison to a lot of
Absolutely.
people. You know, people don't know the depths of like my musical abilities, and so I keep a lot of my private stuff very private, because I don't have very much for me. You know,
Sure.
I don't have. Most of my life's very open, so what you see on Facebook, you know, what people talk about, it's like an open book. So I try to keep a little bit of it back for me, and this is one of those things that I've not talked about in depth. And just to wrap up quickly, I then started going to this stall, but before I went to the stall, my nan took me to a charity shop, and I picked up, we got the cheapest suit jacket that I could afford, and I picked it off the shelves, and it were a purple velvet suit jacket. And so I put it
Getting a
on.
mental image.
I looked like Willy Wonka. And what made it even worse is, at the time Harry Potter had just come out. So around about the time Harry Potter had come out. So around about Christmas time that year, we were forced to wear like Harry Potter style hats as well. So I'm stood on this stall with this purple velvet jacket on and this Willy Wonka style hat. The Harry Potter style hat. And I'm performing magic, and I really got to see what it were like to perform for people. I learnt what it were like to be able to create my own effects and sell them. So they were the first effects that I ever created and ever sold. I met a few interesting people. I think that were the first time that I'd ever met Dynamo. So he'd come across, and at the time he were really young as well. So it's you know, it's long before the TV stuff. He'd come across, and he popped onto the. He came to the stall at one point, and I we're a pitch man, so I used to just pitch products, and I were really clever though. So what I'd do is, like, any product of mine, I'd put up by £1, like, purposely, so if people bought it, I'd make £1 profit. But if it came to like 3 p.m, I'd then say, look, it's deal time, and then I'd take it down by £1. So I always got the price I wanted for it anyway, and any more were a bonus.
Well, if magic doesn't work out, I'm sure you got a long career in sales ahead of you.
Oh, I don't know. At the time, I was so underconfident, you know. Just the only thing that kept me going out, you know, socially was the magic. So that's all I looked forward to, was the one day that I worked on a stall. And then I started blading it up. So, but I already knew, I used to watch the stuff on TV, and Blaine were great. A breath of fresh air for magic, because if anybody doesn't remember before that period, there wasn't really such thing as...
Copperfield.
Yeah, it wasn't really anything that was street. There were no street stuff. And if you ever did see street stuff, I mean, we had Paul Zenon, and Paul Zenon were incredible. Yeah. But if you ever did see street stuff, it didn't. The thing that Blaine captured was that raw,
the reaction,
ghetto feel. There were nothing set up. You were just. Whereas when you'd watched anything that was done on the street by anybody before that point,
they put a full set.
They put a full set on the street, and they'd just taken a studio and put it on the street. So that were a breath of fresh air, and it gave me it gave me a lot to take into school and perform at school. So I did that, and then the mentalism came at about 14, 15. I'd say 15, so it'd probably be about 2000, around about that point. And that's just estimating, I'm not very good mathematically, but Derren Brown came out, and this is when I got serious about mentalism. I saw Derren Brown on TV, and I sort of looked back, he fooled the pants off me completely. I bought into everything that he was doing.
You're not alone. I think most of us have gone down that road as well.
He's such a good performer.
Absolutely.
You know, so slick, and just absolutely fried the hell out of me. So I just tried doing what he was doing, using deception, using real techniques that I'd make up. And a lot of the stuff that have become very popular now, I created all the way back then, the ceilings all the way back then. So I was doing that sort of thing, you know, right back then, just because that's how I thought Derren was doing it.
So you would look at the pseudo methods and think they were real, and you try to replicate those.
That's it. Yeah.
That's strong. I mean,
it worked. Yeah. It worked for a bit, and then
that's great.
For me, my entire life, right up until I was probably 20 years old, there's been so many trials and tribulations that I bet people have a better time serving a life sentence. So when I got to 2021, it really got to a point where I was like, it's getting to a point now where I really need to do something I love. You know, I need to spend some time, not being selfish, but actively putting my time into doing this. So 2021, I started doing shows, and then all of that's led to right here. So I just got off my ass and
brilliant,
and did it, and that's it. So
sounds like a modern day Cinderella story, which is
just a lot more broad and tattooed.
Do you mind if we take a question? I got a really good question here.
Yeah,
I think this is worth hearing. It says, Pete, you're well known for implementing very bold methods to achieve your effects. You've said you will go to very great lengths to achieve the result you want. Could you give us an example of how you seized an opportunity in a bold fashion to blow some minds, similar to the stories you've told in the past? Have been absolutely eye-opening and a real lesson to how to create pure miracles. Huge fan of your work. All the best, Mike in Ireland. So maybe an example of how you took a situation and made it your own, or really seized that opportunity.
So I've got a really cool one that I've never talked about on camera before, because as I say, I tend to keep my business to myself. But this is one time there was a performer that had booked me to consult, and I often get calls, and most of the calls or emails that I get are based off a necessity. So I had a guy in England, and I'm not going to name any names, but you know who you are. He's a good friend of mine now. He told the media that he could make a statue disappear. So performers make bold claims all the time to make themselves look a lot greater than they are. And I'm not saying this guy ain't great, because he really is, and I'm sure he's tuned in right now. But yeah, he told everybody that he could make a statue disappear, and he had no method to do it. You know, he had no budget to do it. And another guy had messaged me, and he said, I've got myself into a real sticky situation. I've told the media that I can do anything that's been documented that a psychic can do. So this is a story that I want to tell, and this is more how I do something that's fairly bold, but I think it'll show you the lengths I'll go to make a miracle happen. So he called me up and he said, this is the specifications that they've set. They're going to be at least a mile away. They're going to be in a room. I'm not going to know who the person is. I'm not going to know nothing about the person. They're going to take an item or an object. They're going to put it inside a box. They're going to put a lid on the box, and you've got to somehow remote view what's inside. And that had been documented as someone who could do this. Excuse me. So they said, how would you do this? And I said, can't be done. Simple as that, it can't be done. He said, but how would you do it? I said, well, I don't know. I said, could you contact the person? Is there any way you could get any information about the person? Could you watch the person? There's a host of things that come. He says, no, not at all. This is a journalist. If they see me looking at them, straight away they're going to call me out on it. They're going to, if I don't follow this stunt up or I ignore it, they're going to call me out on it. I need to get out of this in the best sense possible. So I said, well, I think that the psychic, if this is documented as a real case and not just a challenge they're setting up to try and just, expose you, probably coincidentally managed to pull this off once, and that was the only time it was documented. And luck has great play in the thing that we do. And I always feel if you're going to set yourself up in any situation, you've got a solid method to fall back on. Fire something out first in a bold sense. Try to take a guess, and maybe this is the reason that you were in this situation. So I said, give me 10 minutes and call me back, and I'll try to come up with something. So I'm sat for 10 minutes at my hands, I'm tearing my hair out thinking, how on earth can I do this? So you think about that. You're sat, there's somebody on the phone that's fairly well established, and they've asked you to come up with something. They couldn't come up with it. The other consultants couldn't come up with it. Where do you go? So you think about that. What would you do in that situation? Is that
I'd probably cry and, release myself on the floor. But, obviously you took it a step further and.
It's one of them impossible situations. So I got back on the phone. I said, is this going to be aired on television? They said, possibly, yeah, it's definitely going to be going in the papers and stuff. I said, well, let's make it more entertaining. Tell them to take the object and put it inside an army base and put that object in a box and have that box surrounded by armed guards. And if the armed guards see you or you come within 10 feet of the object, they shoot you on sight, right? So...
Dramatic.
Yeah, it's that beautiful air of drama. And he said, yeah, but that's not helping my situation. And I said, it is. So we sorted the business end out of stuff, and he asked me for the solution. So this is the solution to that problem that's fairly bold. Anything that gets checked into an army base has to be put in through itinerary for security reasons. So that piece of information exists in two places at the exact same time. Inside that box surrounded by armed guards and on a list somewhere that's been checked in. So all you've got to go do is read the guy that checked that in.
That's so devious.
Right, so we did that and we pulled it off. And we managed to successfully remote view what was inside the box. Are we good?
Yeah, we're good. That's absolutely incredible. I think goes to show you, how you think, and I think a lot of what you do is very dramatic and you can build up effects very well and you can deliver them very well. I don't want to spend too much time on anecdotes because we will get back to some more anecdotes. I'll be honest, I've never seen so many questions come in. I'm sorry if I can't show all of your questions. I just don't want to saturate the feed. This is coming in. It's absolutely insane. Thank you guys for showing so much interest. I'd like to set up this clip that we're going to watch and talk about the first effect, if that's cool. Is that all right with you, Peter?
Yeah, so the first clip that we've got planned, the reason that we went out to do this live is because I wanted to show you the reactions that this gets outside on the streets and how believable this is. And this is one effect that I probably consider this my most commercial effect. I don't often release commercial effects because I just perform mentalism for me, and this just happened to tie in with something I was doing situationally. So can I talk about how this came about, and then we'll roll the clip?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we'll take a look at it. So the best mentalism and magic, I feel, happens by a happy accident. So I'm at a meeting in LA with a series of mentalists, and if you were at the meeting with me, you'll know where it is, but I promise I wouldn't talk about who was at the meeting or what the meeting was about outside of the meeting. This is one little thing that I'm sure people won't mind me talking about. And there were an effect where this really cool performer comes and he asks a lady to think of a playing card. So she thinks of a card. He says, you've not told anybody else this, there's nothing set up in any sense. Here's the deck of cards. Go through the deck. So she goes through the deck, and then she goes through it a second time, and I'm thinking, what's going on? She goes, come on. Almost like this guy's managed to take the one card out that she was going to pick before this had all started. And I'm sat there thinking, wow. This is clean. This is clean. So she thumbs through the deck one more time, And she finds it and she goes, oh. And then he says, pull out 7 other cards so that your card is in a series of cards and I'll try to guess where it is. And when the performance had finished, I got up and I did like a 10-minute talk. And the first part of the talk were about happy accidents. And that's a happy accident because for me now, after watching that, I could have performed that effect 100 times and that never would have happened because it's just an accident. But what it would have inspired me to do is take that card out, like the Queen of Hearts or whatever, and place that into my pocket before we began. The reason being now, if she does coincidentally think of the Queen of Hearts, when I give the deck out, if she runs through, she's never going to notice if that's not the card she's thinking of. But if it is the card she's thinking of, when she goes through, that's an effect in itself, mind blown, and you never have to pull the 7 other cards out.
Yeah.
So happy accidents are often the best ways to create effects. And if you perform effects enough, you'll realise, you know, that happy accidents come up.
They do happen quite often.
And that's what this is. It's just one of them effects that's a happy accident. For a long time I was doing something that I'm about to show you later on, so not now, and I'd ask them to open the iPhone and to go into it, or open their phone, whatever, go into it. And the common thing that I would get, that kept cropping up after a while when people felt comfortable with me, more comfortable, was, well, why can't you open the phone? You know, can't you take this and can't you open it up? And I'm just like, I need a way.
Like if you're a mind reader, you should be able to do that
I shouldn't be
yourself.
asking. I shouldn't be having to asking for them to open the phone. So this was just based off the back of when I was doing another routine that we're going to get into later on. It was just based off the back of having to continually get them to open the phone. So I needed something based off an accident to get into the phone before it started. So what you're about to see is my way to approach anybody, any place, any time, and essentially get them to think of the code for their phone and unlock it. So here's the
pin
performance.
divination. Please roll the clip.
So I'm Pete, your name is?
Jared.
Jared, it's
Nice
a pleasure to
Pete.
meet you. I've flown in from the UK,
Okay.
and I've been flown over here to read minds.
Read minds, all right.
Do you believe in the concept of being able to read somebody?
Absolutely.
God, this is great. We're off to a flying
Oh,
start.
yeah, we're gonna do
Do you,
great.
do you have like a mobile phone or something on you that has a code on it?
I do, right here, yeah.
Right, can you open that up? Don't let me see when you do this. Open
Okay.
it up and go through the menu
Okay.
and go into your calculator. Now, there's a
Calculator.
specific reason why I'm asking you to do this. You'll understand in a moment.
Okay.
Have you done that?
Yeah.
I want you to punch in the code to the phone.
Okay.
That just means that you don't have to say this out loud and everybody at home can see what the code is. When you've done, lock the top of the phone, polish the screen. That means that you're rubbing off any evidence and there's no indication as to what code you've just punched in.
Okay. All right.
Right? So place it flat on the table. I want to prove that there's no way that you can just punch in random codes
Yeah.
and hope this opens. So, hold your hand flat for me, Jared. If this doesn't work, it doesn't matter, but I'll try my best. Right? Like this.
Okay.
Now I'm going to try to read you to ascertain whether this is a convenient number or a memorable number or a mix of the two.
Okay.
Usually when we create a PIN code, it's based off the back of an express lifestyle or a life-inspired event. So I feel we use straight away this is a mix of the two, but more so than anything else, this is a convenient number. So it tells me you live an express lifestyle. You are probably the sort of person, have you just moved?
I haven't, but I'm trying to
You're
move.
just trying to move, that's
Trying
why
to
it's
move,
on the
yeah.
back of your mind. So
Yeah.
you need to get that out of there because I'm trying to focus on this.
Okay.
Do you ever use Facebook
Yes,
on
I
here?
do.
What about emails?
Yes.
Online banking?
Just started online
Just
banking
started
now,
online
yeah.
banking on there. Right, and the reason I'm asking is because there's only 4 digits that protect somebody from getting into that
Yeah.
and stealing a whole host of unsavory
A lot of my
information.
life, yeah.
Yeah. So what I want you to do is focus on that first digit for me. Look right at me. Don't say anything, but I feel this is probably a favourite number, so look right at me. Yes. 7. Look right at me. Do you know how to count in any other language?
Can I count in any other language?
Yeah, just a yes or a no.
Yes.
Can you think of the second digit to this code and just imagine saying it to me in a different language in your mind? Now the reason I'm telling you to do this is because I believe no matter where you are in the world, no matter what language you speak, our brains are communicable in any
I'm
language.
saying it in 2 different languages.
Okay, this is perfect.
I'm trying to trick you.
This is a 1. Like I said, no matter where we're from, our minds translate this. Look at me. Let's hold this down. another 7. If this opens, you've managed to do this perfect. Because this is not just a one-way thing. It's not about me receiving thoughts. You've got to be able to
setting thoughts.
transmit them in order for me to receive them. A 3.
Yes! Oh my god! Dude,
Thanks,
that
man.
was amazing. Now you're gonna read my.
Now you have to
my
change your passcode.
I know I have to, right? Cheers to that, buddy.
Wow. How great is that, right?
So it's normally done with more than one person. I prefer to do it with 2, but I know that a lot of people ask me, can this just be done with one person? Now, I know that we had the added bonus of having the camera there so that they could verify the number, and with the DSLR, you couldn't really see the screen.
Right.
That's just a shooting issue. But
Sure.
yeah, it's normally done with 2 people, and what would happen is, so this is the byplay of events. The first person to take out their phone, they'd unlock it, they'd go to the calculator. This is so they don't have to say the code out loud, essentially, you know. They punch it in, they give the phone to somebody else. This means that they don't have to tell that person it, they're not moving their lips in any sense. It just makes it super fair.
That's great.
They look at it, they can take it out with their phone if they want, you know, they lock the phone, they polish
So you have the justification for putting it on a calculator.
yeah.
So that you can show it to someone else.
Yeah, yeah.
You don't have to say it.
They don't have to
vocally.
say, and there's they can take it out. You know,
Right.
it's not an issue. They can take it out if they want as well, and they lock the phone. And
Would you like to get into it now? Would you like to just sort of
yeah, I'm going
before you
to.
explain it, or?
Well, I'll explain the sort of technique around it, and then I'll get into the method.
Okay.
So then what happens is they lock the phone, they polish it, they hand it to somebody else. So if there's 3 people at a table, this is perfect. So they hand it to somebody else then punches in random codes. It doesn't unlock. And I think there's a beautiful moment there where it shows you can't just type in a random code and this,
Right.
you know, it just unlocks.
Like it's some sort of weird app that you would put on someone's phone. We know
That's
how
it,
lay people
you know.
think, and that might be.
And that's it. I mean, and what's beautiful about this is you don't really touch the phone. You know, it just gets put flat on the hand, and you hover your hand over the top of it, and that's it. Then you punch in the digits, and boom, the phone
It
opens up.
A
Right.
great thing that you did as well, and I noticed, I sort of pointed this out while it was on camera. You always create the sense of drama. And I think that's really something I've noticed about you and about your style, and that's why you get such great reactions, is because you put something at stake. And just the small notion of mentioning, well, what do you keep on your phone? Your banking information, your email, so very personal things. So if someone had your PIN, they would be able to access all this information and possibly, steal your identity. So there's this great sense of drama. Even though this is all for show, there is that implemented sense of drama, that seed of drama that's in the spectator, and now there's something at stake. So when he reacts, he's not only reacting to the trick, he's reacting to the fact that, you could have stole his phone and stole all his information if you wanted to.
It's
That's
the
great.
stuff in the bank account, the stuff on the Facebooks, the passwords from the email addresses.
It's a great setup.
It just has that air of being more than just a code, and the method here is really simple. So I'm going to get into that last, because for me it's ultimately not the most important point. The most important point with this is what I call the sprinklings, the little bits that go around the effect. What you saw here is just a quick variation, but there's a really cool thing that I do. I'll show you. So Joe, can you think of either a lie? Think of a lie for me, but don't say it out loud, and get one in mind. Right? Let's go again. Think of either another lie or a truth. So this time it's a lie. Let's do this again. Think of a lie or a truth. So you started with a lie and moved to a truth. No, sorry, the other way around. You started with a... you started with a lie and moved to a truth. There we go. And I could do this over and again. One more time, just for demonstrative purposes. So instantly this time, straight away to a truth. Right? So... No? Not that time? Okay. So did you change at the last second? Most of the time you can hit this. So let me tell you what's going on here. And I'll be bold with this. It really doesn't matter, because I have a solid out. So this is the sprinklings, right? And you can see here that Joe's not just lying for me and genuinely did get 3 hits, and I normally wouldn't push for 4, right? But the way this works is, if you ask somebody to think of a lie, just watch which way their eyes go, right? Then you ask them to think of a truth, just watch which way their eyes go. So then you say either think of another lie or another truth. Be honest, at the end, did you repeat one of the lies or the truths? Yeah, that's why then I wasn't getting the tell, because it didn't move off, so I just had to take the guess, right? But you're watching for which way the eyes move, right?
It's like a tell.
It's a tell, yeah. It's a really, really beautiful tell, and this is what I do though. So let's say that the code was 1, 2, 3, 4. Instead of just sitting there and saying, the first digit's a 1, right? Yes. The first digit's a 2. Yes. The third digit's a 3, right? Yes. The fourth digit's a 4. It's very easy to do that, and every single person's capable of doing that. But what I really like is if I say, I'd like to figure out how you think about lying and how you think about telling the truth. Focus on the first digit for me. So in your mind, tell me a lie. So he tells me a lie in his mind, and I say, also, now think of something that's true. And I'm just watching the difference in tells, and there's a beautiful reason why I'm setting this up. I'll do this 2 or 3 times. If I feel that you're stopping to give me tells like you did a moment ago, that's either because A, you're struggling to think of more things, or B, because you're wanting to lock me out, which I think, put under pressure, it's probably because you were struggling to think of more things that quickly, right? But this would be relaxed normally in a social situation. This is the beautiful line. Focus on that first digit for me now. Imagine seeing it in your mind and jump to another number, right? So now you're telling me a lie. This is what's beautiful, because there's such a beautiful little thing that goes on here, right? I know that if I said to each one of you here, think of the number 7 for me right now, and in your minds jump back to another number like the number 9 and tell when you've all got it in mind. The likeliness is that you're on a 3 or a 4, right? That's going to be the likeliness, because you're not going to jump right down to 1. I've said 9, so you're not going to jump to 8. You're not going to jump to 6. 5 seems a little bit too close. 3 and 4 seem really fair, but it doesn't even matter. That doesn't matter, because as long as you're getting the smiles, that's what's important, because that's all the confirmation everybody else needs. So that first digit, I'll say, so tell me a lie, jump to another number in your mind. So I know if he's on 1, it'll be 3 or 4. The same, just in the opposite direction, right? So I'll say, I know that you're feeling guilty about having to lie in this situation. And if they're with a girl, if they're with the girlfriend, there's this beautiful moment where I say, I know that you're feeling guilty about having to lie in front of your girlfriend, because I'd say you're quite an honest guy. And I say, because you're quite an honest guy, he's not going to turn around in front of his girlfriend and say, no, I'm not an honest guy. So you've got that beautiful...
You've put him into a corner.
That's it, it's a beautiful double bind, you know? So there's the double bind there, and I said, don't give me any clues. Don't say anything out loud, and I don't want you to react about anything from this point. So I feel one of the lies were about your body, right? And that's the first thing that I say. And I'll normally get a smile, because the first thing that jumps into his head is, I know what he means by that. And he thinks that I mean is manhood, right? So he starts to smile. She starts to smile because she knows what I'm implying, but because he's smiling, she thinks he's right. So I say, when I was asking you to think about the lies earlier, I feel one of these were about a body part, and I do this, a body part. But more interestingly, I think you only went, 2, 3 away from the number. And if I'm getting a really big smile now, I know that it's a 3 or a 4.
Right.
I say, so this is a 3 or 4, but, and the line but's the important line, because this is the universal language for stop. Because I don't want him to, at that point, say...
No, it was a 5.
No, it was a 5. I don't want that, right? I say, but, what's important?
Yeah, like anything else isn't important.
None of that's relevant.
Yeah.
What's important? All that tells me that the first digit is a 1. Boom. And when I hit that 1 now, that's all I ever told you I were aiming for anyway. So I'm saying none of that's important. So you react now at the number 1, which then confirms to every single person that's watching this, not only did I pick up on the lie that you were thinking of earlier on when I asked you to lie in your mind and never say it out loud, but I picked up on the lie of the number that you told as well and confirmed it with a hit of the first digit.
So let me try to wrap my head around this, because so what you're doing, I mean, let me see if I understand, because a lot of times I think what the problem is with a lot of performers, myself included, I'm caught doing this, I'm sure as many of you are, is revealing the information sort of like you said prematurely, or not prematurely, just untimely, and in sort of a rushed manner, almost like yourself as a performer, you might be feeling guilty about having this information, you just want to get it out there and have the reveal, right? A lot of us, oh, is your card the 6 of spades, right away. And then we wonder, well, why didn't I get a great reaction? I just did the same trick he did, and it's not. The method for the trick, the method is such a small part in this. It's really, as you see here,
sprinklings.
the delivery, it's all important. It's, it overshadows anything else. And I even think that, and
Right.
you talked about this as well, about missing.
Yeah, I'm going to get into that,
Sure,
because that's going to be very important
Okay.
later on. The sprinklings are important, and I'm not saying to overdo it. So you might only show that process in the middle, so you might guess the first digit outright, and then in the middle take it up a notch. So I always think about the rule of 3s, and obviously with a chord there's 4. So the first thing, you just hit it outright. The second thing, you might look like you're struggling slightly, miss it and then hit it. The third thing, then you'll start to tell them to lie. You guess it. The fourth thing, you tell them to really concentrate and you start to tell them about them and why they chose the code. That's important. And when you saw this yesterday, you were like, my favorite line out of all that is when you get the code, when you know what the code is, if you notice this is not like 1990 or 2010, you notice it's like 1234 0000, whatever, you know that they live an express lifestyle. So you were saying straight away, that's my favorite line, because what I use is, there's normally two factors that come into play when deciding on a PIN code. One is a number based off a convenience, if we live an express lifestyle, and that'd be like 1234, or it will be inspired by a memorable life event. So one event that happened in our life that just inspired us to commit to that code, that would mean it'd be inevitably easy to remember the code in any given situation. So I normally point out the two different factors, and I say, but sometimes them factors merge. So if this is a number that was at first, years and years ago, something that was just typed in as an express number, but just based off the back of using it on every single debit card, of every computer, every phone, this has now become something that's ultimately memorable, and it's now become part of their life.
And you make it readable. I mean, because if you don't set it up in that way, how else could you possibly read someone if you can't just be picking up on numbers that are in thin air? So you're convincing them that there is a technique to this, that there is a way to this, and just by saying that, sort of confirming that it's one of these two, I mean, they obviously are going to make the connection, and now they're going to start to see what it is you're doing, and you're actually reading.
It's a process, yeah,
what
it shows a process.
Yeah.
And just quickly jumping back to the lie thing, like I say, most of the time, if you take a good guess, you're going to hit with if it's 7, they jump back, it's going to be a 3 or a 4. If it's a 1, they jump forward. You think about what number you'd go for, and the likeliness is that they go for the same number or very close, because they're only springing from that number somewhere else. So just think about this for a few seconds. If you can guess the lie that never existed, that they never typed in, isn't it totally possible now to be able to guess the truth?
Sure.
You know, because it makes it credible and possible before you've even got to it. And that's what all this is about. It's not about revealing the information straight away. This is about making people feel like you know them. And that's what it's, the code's the cherry on top of the cake. I want to talk about them. I want to talk about why they set this code. I want to talk about their lifestyle. I want to talk about, you know, like the guy on the video, have you moved recently?
Yeah, and you got a big hit.
And he's like, no, but I'm planning to.
Yeah, I'm planning on.
And I'm like, I thought that was on your mind. Just get it out of the way for me and focus on this.
And he said, okay.
And he's like, okay.
He said, as if that was like in the front of his mind, and he couldn't think of anything else.
Just move it.
It's a great hit.
And it's not. And to be 100% honest, that's nothing more than a stock line that I find that hits quite a lot.
It's a Barnum statement.
It's just a Barnum statement that I find hits quite frequently because it ties over. But I want to get into that area of stuff more later on. But I just find that's a beautiful moment where I make him feel not guilty, because that's the wrong word, but almost like that's why I've not started picking up on the numbers, because this thing about you moving stopping me from getting to those numbers. And what better way to make him feel like, damn, this guy's inside my mind.
Yeah.
I mean, how would he know that piece of information? It could be anything. These are all little convincers that help people feel like you're inside the head. And it doesn't matter if you come across as being completely eloquent. It doesn't matter if you come across as being completely scripted or completely raw. None of that's relevant, because what is relevant is making them feel that you've not only connected on a social level, but you've connected telepathically. You know, you've connected in a way that nobody else has ever connected with them. And even if you just give them 5-6 minutes of demonstrations, and you've managed to prove that you genuinely can connect with them, make them feel like you can. To them, everything else is irrelevant. To them, there's not a method. It's just you're doing what you say you're doing. And the one thing that Chris will tell you has happened over the last few days when he's seen me doing this stuff to people, the questions that they ask me are not, when did you get into magic? How long have you been doing tricks for? It's like, so how long have you had these abilities? You know, how long have you been reading people for? Do the police ask you to help them on cases? And I say, look, you know, I'm not psychic. I just genuinely, I can do what you guys do, just more intuitively. And that's not, you know, that's not a lie in any sense. We have a Skype call.
Hey, we have a Skype caller. How's it going?
Yeah, good evening.
How are you? What's your name?
Thomas from Germany.
Thomas from Germany. Ja, wie geht es dir?
Sehr gut.
Yeah,
Danke.
good, also. Yeah, good, super. You have a question for Peter?
Yeah.
All right, Peter.
I wanted to ask if you ever thought about using the calendar peak.
Yes,
I
I'm
don't
gonna.
know if I can talk more about this.
Yeah, I'm going to get into that later on because I'm going to segue into, and that's the bit that we're talking about for the arrays thing. So I am going to get into that, I promise.
Okay, thanks.
Great.
No
Well,
problems.
hey, thanks for calling
Thank you
in,
for
Thomas
calling
from
in.
Germany. That's amazing. What
you.
time is it over there, if you don't mind me asking?
Almost 2 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
2 o'clock in the morning.
Thank you for staying
Yeah.
up, Thomas.
Do you have school tomorrow, Thomas?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for staying up,
We
Thomas.
appreciate your passion. Thanks for calling, and we'll get to that question later.
Thanks a lot.
Thank
Bye.
you. Cheers, Thomas. Bye-bye.
So I'm going to turn this. First, I'd like to show you how easy this is. So do you want to unlock the phone?
Yep.
So keep it towards yourself for me. Don't let me see the code. In fact, I'll show you what this looks like from your perspective. So go through the menu and go into the calculator.
Uh-oh.
Take your time, there's no rush. So at this point, whilst he's doing this, I want you all to think about the PIN codes for your ATM or Visa cards, right? Have you done that?
And just leave your visas right here.
Right? Has anybody, just by show of hands, got their Visa card with them? Okay, so everybody in the room, that's good. Can you punch in the code to the phone? Don't let me see it. And I'll just do this presentation list just to quickly show you how this is. Just pass the phone across when you've done that. Please remember that number, right? You got it? Lock the top of the phone for me. In fact, do you want to pass it back here, Chris? So you guys know the code, right? So hold your hand flat for me, and if this doesn't work, it doesn't matter, but I'll try my best here, right? So I know Chris lives an express lifestyle. I know that Chris needs to access this phone on the move, regardless of whether the thumbprint thing works. I know that this is probably a series of numbers that are repeated, and let's cut the presentation right down to where it is. This will be 4 zeros, and then the phone will open up, and there it is, right? So even from this side, you guys are like, what?
And this isn't set up.
This is not
He
set
doesn't
up.
know my passcode.
When I show you this, it's...
Obviously, it wasn't hard to guess my passcode if you had to guess, but I mean, that was right on.
Yeah, but I've just did that quick to show you how fast this can be done. So this comes up like this, and you press this. That's it. That's essentially it, and then you press this to exit. So that's it. So let me show you the move close up from this angle. As soon as I take the phone comes like this. If it comes like this, I then take the phone like this, turn it round. This then comes up as I come up, so this is this. I just punch this. I press this as I turn, and when I turn back round, it's absolutely normal.
And it all happens within 2 or 3 seconds. We see on the clip before, I don't know if you remember, but that was so fast.
It is, it's over very quickly, and if you want to watch the performance of that, you can rewind this at any point.
And once again, before, I hate cutting you off, but once again, the justification is very important here, because what Peter goes on about is, I want you to punch it in so that the person next to you, because for one person this obviously works as well, but for 2 people there's a beautiful justification there where you say, I want you to, so you can show another person, just like I showed you, because I don't want to tell you, he might be reading what I'm saying or he might hear me, so this is no voice, I'm just showing you. And I think that's a great way to sort of justify that.
In a couple of moments I'm going to show you how you can take that out of the calculator and lock it, just in case you feel guilty. I never feel guilty about doing this. The reason I never feel guilty about doing this is because it's in the presentation, and even if somebody swipes up, we'll come to that in a moment, swipes up to access the calculator, you're still going to floor them with this, I promise you, right? So the points that I want to make is this, like Chris said, the justification is ultimately important, is I want you to do this because A, I want you to show somebody else so you don't have to say this out loud, and this is the second one, and this were beautiful. This is something you do with billets. Mark Shandau was the first person that I saw doing this with this particular this iPhone move. I called it Simply Overlooked. He'd say, and pass it to the second person, and this means that if you've punched in the wrong code or you're telling a lie in any sense, I'm going to pick up on that and we're going to count that as a hit, right? So then it gets locked, the phone gets polished, and it gets passed on, and then boom, you open the code and you're in. If you're performing with one person, it doesn't seem like there'd be a good justification. I had the camera, so it was great. I could say, show the camera, so that everybody at home knows what this is. And I find that seems really fair if you've got a camera. If you don't have a camera, don't worry. You just tell them to take it out and go into the calculator, and you say, the reason I'm asking you to do this is because there's going to be so much that's gone on through your day that's all going to be at the front of your mind. I need to make sure that these numbers are prominent and right at the front of your thoughts. So just punch in the first digit and stare at it for a second for me. Now the second, the third, and finally the fourth digit, and just stare at that code for a few seconds and lock the phone. That just means that all that other stuff's been pushed to the back of your mind, and this is now on the front of your mind, and we're ready to start. And if it's one person, that's a perfect justification for this. You don't need to worry about anything else. It doesn't seem suspicious, you know. And you're not limited to how many people you can perform this for. Like Chris said, we were performing for the Royal Ballet, was it yesterday?
Yeah.
The Sacramento Royal Ballet yesterday. And all I want to do is I want to show you these guys, because all I did is had the phone passed around to each of them. And I'm not going to show you the full performance again because I don't want to keep going over the same stuff. But I just want you to watch their reaction to this. So if there were one person at the table that might have figured this out, that had said something, there's one person that didn't feel this were possible, you know, these guys genuinely just, they went with it, and at the end, I think the hit sort of speaks for itself. So this is just the reaction clip of that. A 5? There we go.
How do you do that?
So thank you for helping me out, guys. And, so if you go back and look over that clip, watch the girl whose phone got opened. Go through the she mouths. Watch what she mouths. That's ultimately important because you need to see just what her reaction to this was. And she openly stated that she didn't believe in any of this. You know, she said straight away, well, you can use my phone. You could see she was skeptical at the start of this, but by the end of it, she'd said that, and she started asking me, you know, is there any way that I can do this to improve my life? Is there any way I can do this to improve what it is that I'm doing? And I never offer life advice. That's one thing I don't do. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a doctor. I just, you know, said that these techniques could help improve your memory, but that's about it, and that's not going to help in a dance sense.
I have a nice question here, which is relevant to what you're saying and relevant to the effect. This, unfortunately, I can't see the name, but they said Pete inspired me to get back into magic, and I've told him this personally a few times. He said, if you were to stop doing mentalism magic, what would you do instead? Let's get past that one. But is there a pin code effect that can be done in Android? So basically, what he's asking is let's say they don't have. Let's say you ask for a phone and they don't have one or something. Could you please explain why? I mean, if this can't be done with an Android, why that's not important?
Well, we're going to look at other effects later on that can be used on Android. Right. But the likeliness is if you walk up to a table and you sit down and somebody doesn't have an iPhone, you just perform a different variation of the effect, a different variant. You know, you're not forced to do this. And the likeliness is if they have an Android, it's a swipe passcode or a word. So for me, this was just because most people had iPhones and I knew I could get that piece of information really easily. Yeah. So now let me tell you something that I wasn't going to share that I am going to share with you now, and I just think it's because it's, for this question, it was just because I was talking about the words with the Androids. If you want to do a really cool, almost fourth dimension telepathy or name place-esque type routine, and if you don't know that, that's Bob Cassidy. Anneman invented fourth dimension telepathy, and then Bob Cassidy's taken it to astronomical heights. Please check their work out. If you go online, you just run a quick search on Bob Cassidy. The guy's an absolute genius. And fourth dimension telepathy essentially is where one person thinks of a private piece of information, they write it down. The second person thinks of, it could be a pin code, whatever you want it to be, the name of a dog, whatever. The third person thinks of a drawing. Now, what you do is ultimately you reveal each piece of information in turn, but finish with a drawing duplication. I love the idea of finishing with that drawing duplication on the end. And I wanted to tie that in close-up, but I didn't like the idea of doing it the way that it was done on stage. And the stage version's perfect. I'd do the stage version exactly as it's written, without much of a change. But there's a really beautiful thing that you can do with the code with just a little bit of thought. So if you have an iPhone at home, you can do this now or later on, you can play this back. But when you go to the lock screen on the phone, you'll notice, and you could do this in this room now, you'll notice if you go to the pin code bit where you type your code in, you'll just see numbers right there. But if you look a little bit closer underneath the numbers, you'll see a series of letters. Most people don't even know they're there. It's almost like the old watch thing where you tell someone to cover their watch and you'd say, does it have Roman numerals, dots, numbers, whatever. But what's really cool about this is if you've ever been on one of them automated lines, it tells you to using the keypad on your phone to punch in your passcode, right? So let's say my passcode was the word rose or the image of a rose. If you look at that, so it'd be the number 7 because there's an R underneath it, the number 6 because there's an O underneath it, the number 7 because there's an R underneath it, and the number 3 because there's an E there, right? So you can think of a word or an image and you can convert it into a series of numbers. So you imagine performing this type of routine where you get somebody to, with the methods that we'll show you later on, but you could do it with this if they don't have a code on the phone and you want them to set one. Imagine asking them to think of an image and you say, make sure that if we wrote this out it wouldn't be too long because you're going to have to remember the numbers that you could draw quite easily, and I want you to convert it to a series of numbers. So they quickly convert it to a series of numbers like rows, and they then set that as the passcode on the phone. So now when you recall the numbers, what you're ultimately doing is not only recalling the numbers, but you've got the drawing as well from that series of numbers, and it's without having them write it down, whatever. And you could, at that point, you could play it off however you want. You could say, I'm really struggling here with the code. Can you focus on the drawing and reveal the drawing, and then say, so this must be the passcode. Whatever you want. I feel that you could get 2 nice hits out of that. But in a 4th dimension telepathy sense, with a method that I'm about to share with you in a few moments, using calendar, which is what Thomas just called in on, then finishing up with the drawing on the end, an inspired pin code, you can now go from guessing a first piece of information, which is something we'll talk about, a second piece of information, struggle to guess the third pin code, and finish as a drawing duplication, all close up in person without anybody writing anything down, which is not an issue, but if you've got one person writing something, then 2, and then 3,
it becomes convoluted.
It becomes a lot in close-up, I find, if you're always writing things down.
Yeah.
And it's not, like I say, I'm not an advocate for propless, I'm not an advocate for props, I'm not an advocate for billetless, I'm not an advocate for billets. I'll just work with whatever works at the time and seems most consistent and most congruent, right? And what's really nice about that is it ends on the drawing and you can dupe the drawing on the end. So there's one question that I always get asked, and I said we'd come to this, and this is something that you said to me, and just after Chris had said this to me yesterday, because Chris loved this routine, he said, I really love it, man, but there's only one thing that I'm skeptical about. And he's like, what happens if somebody accesses the calculator the way that you access the calculator?
What if they know about that feature?
Yeah,
And
the
I'm
effect's
sure a lot of
ruined.
you are wondering that as well. You're like, well, that can't actually fly in real life, and you're about to see.
I want to show you this clip, but before we roll it, I want you just to look for the flashlight on the phone. So, this is cool.
There we go.
So before we roll the next clip, did you see the flashlight pop on the phone? That's only accessible by flicking the menu up and pressing the flashlight, right? And if you do that, just right next to the calculator. So that was my indication straight away that this girl's opened the menu the exact same way that I open it. Now most people at this point had moved into a different routine, but I'm not most people, so I thought, all right, I want to show you how you can use simple verbiage to still reveal the code on the end and still fool the hell out of her, right? So let's just play the last bit of the performance so you can see her reaction to this. A 3, right?
No.
Look at me, scream that first digit at me, right? Okay. It's a 5, right?
Yeah.
Look at me, there's 2 numbers the same in this, isn't there?
Uh-huh.
And they're both in the middle?
Kinda, yeah.
Yeah. They are, aren't they?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Look at me. 6, 6. Just imagine screaming this to me.
What?
There we go.
That's awesome.
So, as you can see in the clip, I miscalled the first number. I just did a simple miscall. I know that the first digit's a 5, but psychologically, if I've seen the code, why would I miss? To her, why would I miss that? If I've seen that it's 5665 and the first digit I call out a 3, why would I do that? Why would I purposely make myself wrong to look stupid? Right? So that's all you need to psychologically throw somebody
Just to convince them.
completely away from what it is that you're doing. So if you ever feel that somebody's chasing you, and a lot of the time we run when we're not being chased, but if you ever feel someone is chasing you, failing's fine.
Yeah.
Just fail, but fail gracefully, right? And when you fail, do it on the first digit, and you say to her, look, you need to really concentrate for me to do this. Now you put the pressure back on them to concentrate, and because they're introvertly focused on concentrating on their thoughts, they're not worrying about yours. So you saw the reaction on the end. She flicked it up and she opened it the exact same way I opened it, and yet she was still fooled. So they're not thinking that, and I think that's the ultimate proof here for anybody that asks the question, you know, is this bold? It's not a bold move, it's a very easy move. You know, if you were bold enough, you could probably do this surrounded. I mean, you guys have pretty much an open angle of what I've got, and your faces were still like, and that's because I'm pointing your attention here. My hands direct where people are looking, and it's the same. If I want someone to look at the table, you know, it's a simple implicit move like this, and it's like, why is he brushing the table? We're all going to watch here, you know, if I'm pointing here.
And psychologically, I mean, if their phone's locked, what could you possibly have access to anyways?
That's it.
As soon as they you say lock the phone, they've locked the phone now. They're happy to give it back to you. You can do whatever you want with it. There's no way you can access anything inside that phone anyways.
So that's it. So you can see how commercial this is. You know, imagine the ability to just walk up to somebody and do this. So I like to talk about the codes and ethics. This is the most important point. Don't just start running out there and revealing people's PIN codes, touching people's phones, unlocking stuff, guessing their PIN codes for the bank cards. Make sure the crowd you're performing to is comfortable with what you're doing. Because if they're not comfortable, then ultimately you're disrespecting their privacy.
Yeah, that's a great point.
You know, it's really important and imperative that you're saying to people, do you have a code with a lock on it that you wouldn't mind me guessing? If they say, I do mind, that's great. It's not a problem because it ultimately shows that they believe you could guess it, right? You can either ask again, does anybody else have one? If not, it doesn't matter, right? The reason I prefer the phone to a Visa, and I'll show you what I do with the Visa card in a moment, but the reason I prefer a phone to a Visa is because anybody who knows how to work a phone, anybody who's fairly savvy, knows how to get into the security settings and change the code.
Sure.
So if they're worried, you could say to them, just make a code up.
Yeah, it's harmless.
You know, go in there, make a code up, just set it as the new code temporarily, and we'll try to guess this one. You know, you don't ever have to worry about that. If somebody's panicking about you, if it's the same as their Visa, tell them to change it. There's no issues, there's no stress with them changing this code. And are you okay? Yeah, we're good. Sorry, we just had some technical issues at the back. You know, you don't have to worry about that. There's no problems or anything with the phone because ultimately they can change it at any point. And if they don't like what you're doing, or if you do guess, they're always free to change it straight after. It's not like an ATM where you have to go into the bank, you have to mess about, you have to deal with PIN services, you know, none of that's relevant with this. And also, they're only showing it to the person secretly that they trust. They're not showing it to anybody else. They're just like this and it's straight back. The likeliness is they don't believe you're going to guess it, and then when you guess it, boom. But think about it, what better way to start a series of routines at a table if you're going to introduce a calculator or you're going to introduce using a phone for a few seconds than unlocking their phone to start with. I think it's a beautiful icebreaker and they sort of move into this. And ultimately, if you are still worried about performing these type of effects, don't perform them. You
That's
know,
great. We just had that question answered as well as someone just tapped on. What if someone refuses to hand over the phone or give you the PIN number or something, which is great. I think it adds dramatically to the effect. Like you said, if you say to someone, do you mind if I guess your PIN code? And they say, no, it's too personal. You say, it's okay. So that's sort of established, like you could to everybody else in this drama. It's something similar if you're doing like a stage show and you say, well, I'm going to read minds. If any of you are uncomfortable with this, please stand up and leave. And that's just great, because if someone does stand up and leave, then it's like, yeah, awesome, right? Isn't that great? So
it's just one of the moments I feel that's just, you know, you don't have to worry too much about it. I just think that in the day and age that we're living in, as long as there's not somebody that's sat close by and you make sure that, you know, that you're in a safe environment and you make sure that everything's controlled, there shouldn't be no issues.
Sure.
You know, there shouldn't be no issues.
We've not seen any issues whatsoever, and we've probably filmed. I mean, we filmed quite a bit of presentations on and off camera. You were performing it, and everybody was just blown away. So,
yeah, man.
Great effect, man! Congratulations.
No problems.
It's absolutely amazing.
So, So is that it? Do you want to ask any more questions that are relevant to this at this point?
Relevant to this. Yeah, we're getting questions about your books. We're getting questions. Maybe we can just take a different question here.
Just about the pin stuff, if there's any of the pin stuff.
Yeah, no, we got a lot for later, but nothing about the pin stuff, so we'll stop there for that, man. That's great, fantastic.
So just to answer Thomas's question before we go any further, sometimes it's nice, instead of people guessing your stuff, instead of you guessing their stuff, it's nice if people guess, if they guess yours. So I want to show you Michael's calendar, because I think Michael's calendar is such an exceptional thing. This is Michael Murray's calendar, and I have permission from Michael to show you this. This was inspired by Kenton's calculation, which came out in Devious Realities, which were my first ebook. But can I use you for this? Can you just quickly open your phone for me?
I actually turned it off.
Have you turned it off? Has anyone got a phone that's turned on? Can I borrow this for a second? You just want to unlock it for me? It's cool. Now I'm going to try to keep this fairly close because. Do you want to just move into the side of me? This would be great. Take hold of this, and we could just keep facing this way. Take this. Type in your favourite number for me and keep it towards yourself. So essentially, if I were to go around and ask everybody in this room, the likeliness is that their favourite number would be completely different. This is only relevant to Fred. Press the plus key for me, Fred. And I want you to think of your Visa code. Now listen to me. I don't want you to type in the actual Visa code for security reasons. You choose one digit that you feel you can change easily and remember, and we'll go from there. And when you've got that, punch that into the phone. And then press equals. You done it? Can you remember the total?
Yeah.
Press the number 0 for me. Pass me the phone. Let's just make sure this is gone. Hold your hand flat. If this doesn't work, it doesn't matter, and that's going to stay there, and it gets locked like this. So I never touch the phone, and if I was somehow to recall the total, I wouldn't know the difference between your favourite number, the PIN code, and it'd be impossible for me to, somehow, if I saw the total, which I'm not going to, deduce which is which. Does that make sense? So which would you like me to guess? Your favourite number or your PIN code? It's up to you.
Favorite number.
Your favourite number. Can I borrow your pen, please? So hold your hand flat for me like this. In fact, let's make this interesting. Focus on both, on that one as well. Imagine your favourite number here and your PIN code here. And I'll tell you which one I'm picking up on more prominently. So look down here. And then look across here. Okay. I don't know, one of these starts with a 5, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Which one's this?
This is the PIN code.
The PIN code, because this is the one that's standing out to me more prominently. Okay. And I'm going to try to keep this short because we went into the sprinklings earlier on and I want to keep moving here, but close your eyes down for me. So I'm going to just write what I'm getting. I'm getting this. Can everybody see that? This is what I'm picking up on, ultimately. So this is what I'm getting. So if Fred's managed to transmit this to me, you're going to give him a massive round of applause. Open your eyes, Fred. What was your code?
5623.
5623, right? So there it is, 5623. So that's Michael's calendar. And Michael essentially took what Kenton had done and he applied it to the iPhone and then he added something else. Now, I wasn't going to get into this sort of stuff until a little bit later on, but there's a reason why I want to show you this, because you might be thinking this is very haphazard in the sense that I'm talking about PIN codes continually or whatever, but I want to show you the different variants that you can go out and perform, because ultimately the situation you're going to be in is different every single time, right? Now, this is ultimately simple. And I'm never going to guess what the favourite number is, so I hope you like how I got out of guessing the favourite number here, because there's no way I could know what it is. So I had to sort of just jazz round it, but I'll explain a little bit more. I did say earlier on that they can erase their code from the phone. I did say that. That's important. So let me just open this up. Say that it's 12, which is their favourite number, plus 74 equals, so 86. Right, so we know the total's 86. You tell them to press the number 0, you take it back, you press erase. So when you press equals now, it'll just punch up the last digits to 74.
That's so random.
Yeah, it's weird, it's
and it's
strange.
great because they've erased it. at this point, or you've
Yeah,
erased
they
it,
see you erase it.
Is that something, I guess, that you want to do? You don't tell them to erase because you might fear that they might double tap the
Yeah,
erase
I mean,
button.
you can do. I mean, you
Just click the erase button once.
You can do. There's another thing that you can do. Let's say that I type in 1 plus 1, 2, 3, 4, and I
Right.
press equals. This is just as an example. They press 0, I press erase.
Oh, so
So-
you just tap on the.
So
upper
if you
part.
tap on the border, like an odd number of times, 1, 2, 3.
Well, that's cheeky.
So if you're quick with this when you're doing it there, so this is what it looked like. So let's say it's 1 plus 1, 2, 3, 4 equals. They press 0. So you do this. So and then you press equals. Boom.
Did you get that, George?
Make sure you do it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
let's show-
coming
let's show-
close.
this
Make
is
sure you
great.
do it an odd number of times
Because I think a lot of us are for some reason when we erase something, we erase it 96 times, and we're just like
Yeah, so it's-
double tapping.
so
Angle towards me.
yeah, so it's very difficult to do at this angle. But let's say they press 1 plus 1, 2, 3, 4. They tap equals. It brings up the total. You press the number 0 like this. So you're pressing your erase key. When you tap your erase key, and this is the part that I'm going to struggle to do whilst I'm facing this, but if you tap it once in the middle and then on the border 3 times,
So it's almost like you're tapping the erase like you
Yeah.
normally would out of just.
but because you're holding it like this, and I'll try to show you it from here, when you're doing this, that looks like I'm pressing it in the middle. I'm not, I'm tapping it at the top, and you can tell I'm tapping it at the top because the copy's
copy
coming up.
paste things coming up, yeah.
Right?
so
so
great.
so it looks like I am, so it's just once like that and then like this.
That's great. That's an absolutely great.
You know, it's just a tiny little subtlety that I come up with when I were doing this that I thought were ultimately cool. So that, Thomas, is using it for calendar. So it also ties beautifully in with the 4th dimension, telepathy. Because if you could somehow, and I say somehow, force a total on the first person, somehow, then press the plus key and they type in the drawing for the second person. When I press equals now and put this down here, what I've done ultimately is I know your number, I know yours, but I also know your drawing. But because I'm going to reveal your pin, I don't want to reveal your pin, I just reveal your drawing and your pin. So all this is with a slight amount of stuff, and this seems very technological and haphazard, like I say, because we're sticking on the same subject.
Sure.
And we're talking about the same thing over and over again. But ultimately, having more ways to do this is
It's great. I mean, I had a question of somebody saying, would you use 2 different pin divinations on a phone to cancel out methods? Or is that just something you don't need to do?
you can do. I mean, like I say,
Like if you could use this, and perhaps even Thomas said, do you ever think about combining calendar with the pin code revelation?
you can do. You can do whatever you want with this, and that's. I'm glad people are asking questions like that because you're ultimately being able to quickly see how many different variants
Where you can go.
you can come up with stuff like this, you know, and that's what's important. It's not, you're only bound by your imagination. So none of this stuff that I'm showing you don't have to do it the way that I'm doing it, and that's what's important. I think a lot of the time when people watch these things, they think, oh, I could never see myself doing that. That's not because you couldn't see yourself doing this, it's because you just don't see yourself doing it the way that I do it. Just, you know, and I'm not saying it's because it's too good or too bad, just go out and if you want to reveal a PIN code, do it this way. If you want to, you know, it's safer than an ATM. Notice how with Fred, there's a couple of little performance things that I'd like to brush over on here because it's really important. Is when I'm talking with Fred, there's this really important moment where I asked Fred if he wants me to reveal a favourite number or PIN code. I can honestly say, Fred, that's the first time I've ever had anybody say, tell me my favourite number. 99% of people want you to guess the more impossible thing of 4 digits as opposed to 1 or 2. But it's fine because if you do get that, you'll notice that I didn't panic. I didn't start, oh, what do I do? And I could have used a 1 ahead and I could have wrote down the PIN code and then finished off with that. But it makes it too lengthy for me, and the usual route would be, you know, go for that. So what I do is I say, just turn this hand over and just imagine the favourite number here and the code here and focus on both of them, and I'll tell you what I'm picking up on you from you most prominently. And what I'm doing is then just telling him what I'm reading from him the best. It doesn't matter, he never really had a choice in it at the end anyway. I just said to him, this is what, mind reading is not an applied science. You might pick up on something you never expected to pick up on.
Sure.
You know, you might talk about, you might be reading one thing and accidentally pick up on something else. And anybody that says that that fear is absolutely ridiculous, just look at the psychic community.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
they pull out the most random piece of information that's on nobody's mind and say, does that make sense? The person finds the relevance and says, yes, that's what I'm thinking
They're
about.
missing a button on a jacket, and they're like, oh my God.
There we go. The first clip with Jared, where I said to Jared, just get that out of your mind, and he's like, okay, you know, straight away. It comes down to, it's true. It ultimately comes down to whatever you tell them they're thinking, they start to think of.
Sure. And then using that.
You know, that's it. So do you want to ask a couple of more questions on this sort of stuff?
Do you guys have any questions pertaining to this whole section of effects, so the whole pin code divination or calendar? Do you guys have any questions on that?
What if after you guess the favorite number, then the spectator would ask you, "Can you now reveal my pin?"
Well, you mean guessing the pin and they ask for the favourite number?
Yeah. What would you?
Most of the time, you've now proved you can do what you say you're doing. So if I didn't guess any of these and said, well, I can do it, but I just don't want to, you know, you're going to come across as being pompous. But when you guess this and you turn around and say, you know, this was standing out more prominently for me, if Fred had turned around and said, well, tell me my favourite number as well, I'd say, well, I might come back to that later on. Let's try to read what other people are thinking of. And you never dismiss it completely, but what you do is you move the objection. So for me, if it's just Fred at a table, you know, I'd be very honest and I'd say, I'm going to be 100% honest with you, Fred. I feel that you're maybe more slightly uncomfortable with this, and that's why it were on the forefront of your mind, and you were blocking out the other number, and I'm not getting it. This is what I did get. To him, that's going to be good. That's 1 in 10,000, you know. So.
Or you could just say, I don't need your favorite number. I've got your bank information now. So.
Yeah, I mean, however you play yourself off, you know. So there's so many different ways, and as long as you're not seeming to excuse yourself from the situation, as long as you're not seeming to excuse yourself from what it is that you're doing, and just being honest. A lot of the time, if you can't pick up on something, or you miss a peak, or you're struggling with something, don't be scared to say to somebody, I'm going to be 100% honest, I'm not getting anything. Because that makes it more credible. You know, you look at Uri Geller. He came over to the States to come onto a chat show.
The Johnny Carson.
With the Johnny Carson show, and he knew that something wasn't right, and he spent half an hour doing nothing, and everybody were thinking it were going to make his career flop, and it didn't. It did the exact opposite. Sometimes not picking up on something is as credible as picking up on something, because think about this. Why would you set up such a mood? And I'm not saying in a corporate environment before, you know, people start to mail in saying, yeah, but you paid to hit. That's different, you know. We're talking about in a close-up environment. We're talking about
the social environment,
you know, more
also.
social performing, which is what most of the demographic of the people watching this will be performing.
I agree.
But I mean, you can take this stuff and you can take it onto the stage. You know, there's nothing nicer if you're performing for salespeople to tell them that all you've got to be able to do with a seller to get them to buy is just to be able to learn how they think. And I think one of the most private things that we keep to ourselves on a daily basis, one thing that we probably don't even tell our partners, is the code for our phone. And you can move into it in that sense in a corporate-esque environment, but you ultimately set the rules in whatever playing field you're playing in. So it doesn't always have to be about, they're not writing this down, they're touching a phone, they're going to think this. That's your guilt, that's not my guilt, it's not their guilt. You set the specifications. No, they don't know how to read minds. They don't know what it entails. You know, if you're going to set up, you think about this from a sales perspective. You're at a corporate booking and you're talking, let's say that you're talking about sales. You're talking about how to apply what it is you do to sales. And I'm not saying pretending to use body language and stuff like that. What I'm saying is you're talking about consolidation, or you're talking about the fact that most sales are not important without the correct consolidation. And you're saying, well, you're here and they're down there. So let's say there's a slight stage. How hard is it to say, so let's paint the scene? So usually you'd be in the customer's house sat next to them. So can somebody bring a chair and just sit next to me on stage? Paint the scene. As long as you can control the variables, which you can do. Sure. It takes 2 seconds for somebody to bring a chair. You should already have another chair there anyway. You sit down. So one of the things that someone said to me a long time ago from a choreography point of view is you should never sit down on stage. And I think that's absolute tosh, because during part of my act I sit down, and the reason that I sit down is because there's a nice binary contrast. You're standing up, you're moving about. When you sit down, that's when the audience perceive you to be relaxed. When you're talking and telling a story now, it's almost, they feel like there's a difference in the way that the mood of the room's acting. It brings it down, it comes down for a story. You lean right down.
It's like leaning in.
And you lean in to tell them something. And everybody else leans in with you, right? And it's the same, there's a moment, if you go back to the ballet performance that I didn't point out, because I didn't want to talk about the choreography of stuff, but you'll notice I go like this when I go for the pin code, and that's a typical stage move to get people to applaud. You know, you're uplifting people, and that's why they play the music, and you lift your hands. It's like the gusto of music, the crescendo. You know, this is the crescendo.
That's a great little tip.
And it's just little tiny things like this that where you go, and there you are. You know, little, instead of just going, and that's it. You know, just that little, and there you are. You know, and you just smile as you're doing this. It gives everybody that moment of release. So yeah, so this can be done socially. It's going to be done more socially. But what I'm saying is, don't be scared to miss. And if you miss in a corporate environment and you're paid to hit, there's going to be times where ultimately there's nothing you can do. Somebody's wrote something down and it's squiggled. Yeah, you can write the squiggles to look the same and just show them it. You can do that, you know, and say, well, this is what I was picking up on. Open the piece of paper and show you what we've got. Oh, this is why I was picking up on this. But it's never going to be the same. It's never going to look the same, you know, and you say, because it was confused in your mind, I picked up on it. No. What you do is you turn around if it's for sales and you say, you know, be 100% honest, how many people in this room walk into a household and sell at every single house that they stop at? You know, nobody does. It's understandable that sometimes in life, not everything goes to plan. So don't be scared, don't be fearful of failing, don't worry. So do you want to sit over at that side, Fred? Thank you for helping me out, mate.
I mean, there was one question, what do you do if the phone is handed and that the calculator peak is turned off? I suppose you can toggle that. I'm not aware of that.
It does happen, yeah. And these are the sort of questions that I want answering because ultimately these are the most important thing. And I've got all the time in the world to talk. And whilst I'm here, I'd rather get these out of the way. So please bear with me at home. With that, it's happened to me a couple of times, and there's pretty much nothing you can do. And in them scenarios, just do what you do here. Or another great one that you can do at that point is you can say to them, do you know what? In fact, if I guess yours, you're always going to come up with the most convoluted ways as to how I guessed yours. Whereas, if you guess mine, if you guess my pin code, this will prove beyond any shadow of a doubt what I'm showing you is genuinely credible. So there's over 10,000. Yeah, there's over 10,000 different combinations. Do you want to try?
Yeah.
Okay, so off the cuff, if this doesn't work, please forgive me, but I'll just show you what I do in that instance, and it's just because we've segued here.
So I'm going to guess your pin code.
If you want.
Okay.
So we'll start simply, and it's essential that you follow your instincts. If you don't follow your instincts, this won't work. Okay. So all I'd like you to do is just imagine walking up to a pin pad and thinking of a number from 1 to 10. Stick with it, right?
Okay.
Now, at this point, the likeliness is that if I ask anybody else in this room, they'd feel differently, but I put Chris under a certain air of pressure, and you've got a number in mind now. Now, I want you to focus on the second digit. Do you feel, and just use your feelings here, that the second digit is higher or lower? And just take your time.
Lower.
Do you want to change your mind? Are you happy with that?
No, I'm happy with that.
Okay. To what degree do you believe this is lower? And just use your feelings.
What do you mean?
Like, how much lower do you feel it is? Just take your time.
2.
So again, you thought the first digit and you felt the second digit was lower by 2. The third digit, wait for this, do you believe it's higher or lower and by how many? And just take your time to do this, feel it.
Lower by 3.
Okay, so you've got the first, second and third digit, right? Now the last digit in comparison to the third digit, really take your time. Don't rush this. This is the most important one. It's the one that strings the entire series of numbers together.
Higher by 1.
So you've got the first, the second, the third and the fourth digit. And again, there's over 10,000 combinations, and you just use your feelings to ascertain my code. Close your eyes down for me, Chris. So,
just to make sure, I'm not in on this in any way with Peter.
Well, I didn't even know it was coming up, so it's good. So this is the pin code to my bank.
This might legitimately freak me out.
Right, this is the pin code to my bank. Can everybody see this? Yes. Just make sure when you're looking down at that, you can't see through it. Everybody here in the studio, verify that. Open your eyes, Chris. Be 100% honest. What did you feel my pin code was?
7523.
7523, and there it is, Chris. So, ultimately, that's gonna be nice for them to. Yeah, it's cool. It's a little spin-off where you don't get that tab on the bottom, and there's nothing, and there's no props involved. It's just me writing, and that's it. right? So, shall I explain this or not? Do you want me to explain this?
Yeah, I don't know. Do you guys want to learn it? Is this something you might
this
want to learn?
something-
Yeah.
Is this something? Okay. So this is like I said, I wasn't planning to teach this, and this were never part of, never meant to be part of this. But because the question were asked, what happens if the tab's not there? I generally move into this, and look what I just did though. I reframed the situation. So I said, do you know what? In fact, I know what you're going to think. That if I did guess your code, you know, there's some method that's involved in doing this. You know, there's some, you know, maybe somehow I saw your fingers moving. You'll come up with the most convoluted explanation as to how I got there. However, if you guess what I'm thinking, the likeliness is that it'd prove that everything I'm showing you is genuinely credible. Right? So that's the setup to this. And then you say, so are you happy to try guess my code? So this is really simple. As you know, it's probably the easiest routine ever. And I'll tell you where it started. So this started in Bigger Fish 2 with the life equation. And then Michael Murray released something called Springboard. Now what's interesting about me and Michael, so what you'll notice is that if you read through Michael's books, I don't know if any of you guys have ever read through any of Michael's stuff, but when you flick through Michael Murray's stuff, it'll say, oh, I saw Peter doing this, so I do this. Michael, when you're reading through that, you look at it and my name crops up a lot. But in my work, Michael's name crops up a lot. So what's really interesting is I feel that you're often inspired by your close circle of friends. So Atlas Brookings, you know, Michael, the people that are close really inspire me to, when I see their ideas, I go, wow. And this is not anything like the original variation of Michael's. Like when Michael comes up with something, it's not like anything like the original variation of mine, but it might keep one concept or element that stays the same, that just better fits us. And we talk to each other and we're like, look, you know, I want to share this, is this good for me to share? And it's really cool because we're almost like, I'd say, the best soundboards for each other, because Michael will ring me up on the phone excited with something. A month later I'll say, I've been going out, I've been doing this, and it's inspired by this, and this is what I've added. And then Michael will take the bit that I've added and ring me back, and we'll be talking between, but ring me back a month later and say, I've just come up with this is incredible. So I'd say that probably Michael's one of my biggest inspirations, just because we so naturally connect that when we I used to have a guitarist in a band called Rob Hauker. I were in a band called Open Fire and we went on tour, and I've jammed with plenty of other guitarists, but nobody quite fit my style like he did. And there was just something about the way that he played, and he was so strange that we went away one weekend and we were like, right, we're going to write a song, we're going to come back. We both went away and we wrote a song, and we used to use augmented patterns, really strange patterns, and we'd pick in a really strange sense. We came back and we pretty much identically wrote the exact same introduction to this song. It wasn't just standard 4 chords. This is augmented picking over ridiculous like scales and arpeggios. So this is very much similar. So me and Michael jam. So the things that you're seeing, how like my pin code divination, just how much Michael's calendar beautifully fits alongside that, should you want to. Do you know what I mean? And that's because we work closely together. So what's really nice is
the same vibe.
Yeah, you take both of them and you put them together, and then there's this beautiful mash of just like really cool music. It's
that actually answers a question we had. We had somebody asking, do you prefer when creating? He mentioned that you were sort of solo in solitude for a long time, sort of creating, and then obviously you work with Atlas and many others. Is there a preference to creating? Do you prefer creating by yourself or with others, like you just mentioned? And maybe you answered the question.
Yeah, it's like I say, it's very rare that I create with anybody else, or it's very rare that I create based off the back of somebody else's stuff. Just to mention quickly, and I know we've got a Skype call waiting, so just to mention very quickly, the language thing in the very first video, you'll notice I asked him to imagine sending the number to me in a different language. I saw Ted Karmelovich doing that years and years and years ago, and nobody's done it since. Everyone's forgotten about it.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty fun.
And I saw Ted Karmelovich doing it, and the concept he applied to him was just because he picked somebody by accident out of the audience that couldn't speak English.
Right.
And I don't think he ever used it past that. And if you ever come up with a number 1 when you're doing a pin divination, how many people in this room can say the number 1 in a second language?
2 or 3 or 4 languages even, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. So instead of having them transmit it in English, have them think about it in a different language.
funny concept,
Because remember, they don't know that you know it's the number one, right? So you say, think about this number. Be honest with me. Could you think of this number in a different language and transmit it to me in a different language? Because I believe that our brains are communicable in any language.
Right. The information isn't
And
based
that's
on
it,
language;
yeah. And
it's based on the information
And
itself.
language is not a barrier because
That's cool.
when our brains
That's cool.
connect telepathically. So we'll quickly take this Skype call because the buzzer's going mad.
Sure. Yeah.
And then we'll keep moving because it's very haphazard.
Hello there, young man. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. What's your name?
RJ.
What's that?
RJ.
RJ?
Yes.
How's it going, man?
It's going well. I just was calling in to say, Peter, this lecture has been amazing so far.
Hey, thank you, man.
That's so great.
And I was just going to talk about how you were saying, like, to not be afraid to fail, to sort of gain credibility. And I was wondering if you've ever, in front of, like, a full audience, intentionally failed something just to give yourself more credibility.
I have, and I do, but I have a funny story about South Tyneside Convention.
It's a great question, by the way.
It is. It's a brilliant question. So, preparation often prevents failure. So, preparing properly often prevents failure. And I'd gone to do South Tyneside Convention, and my stage show involves tidbits of pre-show work. But off the back of those bits of pre-show work, and if you don't know what that is, we'll talk a little bit about that. But
Like your tri principle.
yeah. So you've got it. So you know the tri principle. That's it. So it involves little tiny amounts of pre-show work. But what's interesting is I use them principles, and I'll pick somebody at random, and I'll tie the two together to get both pieces of information off the back of one pre-show participant. And I had somebody else do my pre-show, and I'd never had anybody else do my pre-show before for me. And I've gone out on stage, and there's probably about 500, 600 people, and I'm in a theatre, and it's magicians and lay people, a lot of my peers. And the guy came up to me who'd done my work for me, and he said, the woman's wearing a black dress and a blue top. So I'm looking along the audience, and there's a woman wearing a black dress and a blue top. I go a few people on, there's another woman wearing a black dress and a blue top, and then the row just behind there's a black dress and a blue top. And there's a sequin blue top and a black dress, and there's a series of these women that are all wearing the same thing, and I'm like, damn, like this is after I've come out on stage and after I've given my script. If I'd seen this beforehand, I might have said, for example, everybody in the audience, let's say it was a name, think of a name. Now I'm picking up on a name beginning with a P, who's thinking of that, and then selected it that way. But at the time, it just didn't go like that. So I had no billets in my pocket. I'd never asked anybody to bring anything up on stage. I never asked anybody to, I never asked anybody to pass me a pen or a Sharpie. For 10 minutes, I just tried to jazz my way out in front of 600 people, a situation that were ultimately the worst situation that you could be in. And it taught me a lot, because it taught me that I need to prepare more. Because theatre shows, I did more bar shows, for like motorcycle clubs, as I was saying earlier, tattoo parlours, rock bars, nightclubs, like environments that were rough environments, and then I moved up to wine bars. But moving from wine bars to theatres is an entirely different ball game. So constructed failure, that was the question you asked me, and I said I'd go off on tangents, and just let you know that sometimes failure can really teach you a lesson. And what it taught me is to review my act for a theatrical setting. And anybody that saw me in Germany or out in Vegas performing, I'm sure they'll attest to the fact that the show's really tight, every single moment structured perfectly. But I want to answer your question in the best sense possible. So this is a part of my stage act, and there's a reason that I mention my stage act. So right at the start of my stage show, and I promise you I'm getting to the miss. I am getting to the miss, RJ. So right at the start of my stage show, I walk out on stage and I ask two questions. The first question is, how many people believe, by show of hands, that it's possible to have an intuitive power or powers? Hardly anybody puts their hands up. I say, okay, well, a few people put their hands up. How many people believe that they could have a genuine superpower? Nobody puts their hands up, right? And I always say at that point, I want you to imagine being about 8 years old and asking yourself the same question. And I bet the answer would be different. And it goes to show that as we mature, we lose the biggest superpower we're given, the power of imagination. So no matter what happens tonight, I want you to think really positively. All put your hands on your heart and make me a mental promise that no matter what happens, you'll stay positive. So this is why that's important. So then I explain how everything comes full circle. The show progresses, gets into the middle of the show, and as it comes to the middle of the show, paper ball gets thrown out into the audience, gets thrown again and thrown a third time. That person stands up. An envelope's pointed out that's been above my head the entire time, and I talk about the difference between feelings and thoughts. And there's a major difference between feelings and thoughts. And the saying, I think, in America is a penny for your thoughts and a dime for your feelings. And that expresses that your feelings are more valuable than your thoughts. So I ask him to think, and the word think's important, of what could be inside the envelope. And he throws out, he says, a triangle. And I say, it's not. And I'm smiling whilst I say it's not. I say, I want you to start to feel what you think I might put inside there. Now remember, this is not about me, it's about you. So he starts to feel what could be inside there. And he says, a tattooed shark. And normally what they say at that point gets a nice laugh amongst the audience. And I say, again, it's not. But this is where you use your feelings in overdrive. I want you to imagine it's 3 o'clock in the morning, the rain's tapping on the window. And for whatever reason, you can't sleep. I want you to imagine that you sit up and you just make a doodle. You seal it inside an envelope and you deliver it to me when you fall back asleep in a dream. And I place that envelope above the stage. What drawing did you put inside the envelope? And I'm smiling. And he says, a motorbike. And my smile drops and I say, a motorbike. Okay, I think that tells me everything that I need to know about you. Give him a round of applause anyway as he takes a seat. So it fails flat out and you get this little...
Sure.
And then that's it. So I finished the show with a really beautiful story, which I'll finish this lecture on. So I won't ruin it for you. And then I start to walk off the stage. The compere comes back on. I get a nice round of applause. And then I stop the compere and I say, in fact, before we go any further, can I just please wrap up? I did say that at the start of this, the greatest things in life always come full circle. And this circle's not yet complete. I only asked for one thing at the start of this show, for everybody to make a promise, put the hand on the heart, and make a mental promise that no matter what happened, they'd stay positive. And there was one part in this show where everybody felt negative, the drawing. Can somebody shout out what the drawing was? And he shouts out a motorbike.
Yeah.
I pick the envelope down and I hold it up. I say, I guess this shows you that no matter what happens in life, you should always stay positive. And I slide it out and throw it and hold it up. And it's a motorbike, right? So I carefully constructed a miss right into the middle of the show, knowing that everybody would feel negative about it, so then I could play on the promise that we're right at the start to then prove that everything comes full circle.
Sure.
So orchestrated misses are great if you use them in a choreographed theatrical sense. So, you know, yeah, I do put them in, and I feel like if you look back at the clip of the pin code where I missed the 3, I missed the number 3 on purpose to subtly suggest to her that I couldn't know what the number is. So yeah, so don't ever be scared of failing, and if you do fail and people, you know, I mean, you've got one thing going for you. You've got a lot of years you're actively learning. I'm not saying my stuff here, but you're actively learning good stuff at a young age and asking the right questions. So when you get to my age, you'll be light years beyond where I am. And I do get the feeling that you're very passionate, and I think that you're going to go places. So, you know, just don't be scared.
And I just want to say one last thing. You said you might not be learning my stuff, but you're learning good stuff. And I just want to say before I go, I think those two are one and the same. So
Thank you, man.
have a good night.
Thank you,
RJ.
RJ. Thank you for the
Thank
question.
you so much, man. Take
Take care, bro.
Bye-bye.
See you later. So
Very
yeah,
good.
wow.
Right?
Incredible.
Wow.
I can't believe people are tuning in. Do you see the light in the background? People are tuning in at all hours.
It's
it's
daytime.
great. Please, you know, thank you for tuning in. I never expected to be doing what I'm doing now, to be flown around the world, to sit, you know, and sometimes I might come across like I'm a little bit loose and relaxed, but it's just because I'm starting to feel comfortable with this sort of stuff, and I'm so happy that you guys are just giving me the time of day. You know, to me that's
That's also a very good point, Peter. And first of all, I speak for everybody by, you know, thank you for being here. This is great. This is a really great opportunity for the people in the community to see what it is that you do, because you're, I think, to a certain extent, you're a little bit underground, a little bit mysterious, and we all know about the products that you've put out. They've just flown off the shelves, and people want to know why. And this is a great opportunity for us. So thank you, you know, for coming here.
Should we go to this?
Yeah, are we still? Yeah, I'm still. You see how he goes? Oh, here we go. Oh, God.
Hi, Mark from the toilet.
Hey, Mark.
Hello. Hi, guys. All this.
How are you,
This
man?
is where I watch at the table. Sorry, I don't mean to be offensive, but this is what I do. It's been a lot of time.
So I can see you're in your office.
This is where I create all my stuff.
Yeah, now I know where the inspiration comes from. I know where it's derived from. Hey, you got a question, or are you just joshing?
I question.
Okay.
I didn't just come out here to
Hey,
show
man.
you where I hang out. Peter, what's going on, sir? How are you?
Hey, dude, how are you?
The one question I was going to ask was, do you feel that when you do a pin code divination, because I do a few, but I always just do it once at the table, when I'm performing or in a show. Do you feel like doing it twice or multiple times for a group, does it cheapen it? Does it make it, because usually with the first one, I'll go really in depth, like you're talking about, and try to play each digit one by one. And then, like clockwork, someone will open up mine now. And I've used a method of yours and a couple different other methods where I just open up their phone. But I feel like it almost like takes away from the power of the first one. I was just wondering what you do in that sense.
It really does. I think that it does take it away. It does take it away from after you've done it once. The likeliness is that it becomes a challenge the second, third, and fourth time. Right. And I just probably move into the one where they guess my PIN code, because at that point, instead of saying, "Look, I've guessed a PIN code," why don't you try to guess mine? And I think this will be ultimately more interesting, because we can go around all night accepting challenges, but the likeliness is you'll all come up with an explanation as to how I did it, and then move into where they guess my PIN. This has been very haphazard in the sense that whilst I'm showing these on here, I'm trying to offer different variants, but it's a good question you've asked, because I wouldn't ever use these. This is very important. I wouldn't ever do that pin guess and then this pin guess and then that pin guess, and then let's say I did another one in a moment and showed you one more. I wouldn't ever do that pin guess, and then you see, all I'm trying to outline is how you can use these routines in succession with each other to create a really beautiful set. Sorry, not in succession, but how you can use these pin codes in different ways, in different situations, and you just choose the one that's best for the situation. If you ever have the biggest problem of all is when somebody doesn't want to hand you the phone, nobody wants to hand you the phone, they say, well, I'm going to type a pin code in and you guess what it is. And that's the worst question, because you're never going to guess that. That's the worst situation to be in. And the last two things I'm going to show on the PIN code stuff, because it is really, I think it's getting tedious for everybody watching. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't know. Is I like to show this, and then I like to show the one that happens when somebody says, "Well, I'm going to touch a pin. I'm going to type one in. You're not going to touch it, and let's see you do the same thing again." Because you always get the really skeptical ones. So that's the only time that I'd ever do a second one, is if it came down to tying it to another piece of information. So I hope you like how I answer it. I'll answer your question in performance, but it's a great question.
I think my reason for asking is because...
But you're right, it does.
I'm a performer, and a lot of guys, might be hobbyists, might do this, hang out with their friends.
It's a good question.
There's a time where, especially in the corporate setting, where I'm doing, PIN code here, and then I'll even get a client go, "Listen, I really like what you did at this event. Can you do it at my event where you open up the guys' phones?" Like, people love that stuff. And, once again, it's a strong piece, but I'm also the type that you don't have to do.
That's it, you're right.
In succession, I also don't believe that it's good to do.
It's not.
Such strong stuff, every single thing.
You're right, you're 100% right.
Everybody doesn't deserve it sometimes.
But Mark, that's also a great point, because I think if you're performing for someone like that, like at a corporate event or anything else, and let's say there are a few familiar faces among the crowd who've seen the effect before, well, it's great to know 3 or 4 or 5 that you're not necessarily going to use one after another, but you do know that you've done this one this way, and these people were there. You're not performing specifically for them, but they were there the first time. Maybe you want to just change it up a bit.
Yeah, it's nice just to have variations of everything. I mean, the best analogy to give is this. If I give you a deck of cards, how many ways would you know to force a playing card?
Oh, 50 million ways, of course.
And that's, I think with this as well, it's situation, it's all about the situation. You're right, and it's a great question, because, like I said, it is haphazard in the sense that I'm showing this, but it just seems that we've had so many questions about it, so many different things. I think it's a really strong area as well for people to be able to take things away and sort of add into it. So yeah.
Well, thank you, Mark, for thank you, sort of.
Cool question, man.
For that lovely surprise.
You can blame the camera guys for that.
Good seeing you. It's good seeing your pretty mug again.
I love you.
Love you too. bud.
Take care, bro.
I'm enjoying this lecture very much. So keep
Thanks for
going.
tuning in. All right,
Thank
bud.
you, man. Thanks for coming and thanks for the call.
Okay. Talk to you soon.
All right,
Take care,
cheers.
bro. Bye. So, we're going to get to this finally, right? We're going to get to this
Glad
finally.
that got out of the way. There's just, by the way,
Sorry, you probably heard that very loudly at home. I just pat my chest.
there are no more awkward moments now. From now on, it is all done. Once we've aired that, nothing is awkward anymore. So we're good.
You see, and
Thanks,
I
Mark.
think that also proves that if you miss and you fail, that's the most awkward thing that could happen
Sure.
to you, and therefore anything from that point is not going to be as embarrassing.
Please.
Because we keep going around houses on
being a
it.
witch.
So this is very simple. The story of this goes the springboard thing by Michael Murray. If you don't know it, grab Michael Murray's springboard. It's done with playing cards. You'll see that the likeness is totally dissimilar. It's nothing to do with pin codes. It's nothing to do with. It's a mentalism routine where ultimately, you know, you can guess their card, they can guess yours. It's just it's like a playing card mentalism type routine. I really love the concept, and it's a concept that I'd never seen before. And that's what Michael's done with a couple of principles that he's come up with. He's managed to capture fresh principles, and it's very rare that you see new principles coming out. And then the second thing with this is I went to Blackpool 2013, and I sat down and showed my pin variation to Fraser Parker, which is another friend of mine. And Fraser was like, oh, it's really cool, and I used to do it with 4 digits. So it'd be 4 digits, I'd ask if the first digit's higher, the second one in comparison, the second, third, and then fourth. And it were a lot to think about. And we got jamming over breakfast, and we came up with the fact that it'd be nicer if it was single digits each in succession. And then I left, and it was still me guessing their pin code, and it still wasn't right. There was still something wrong about it. It didn't make sense. I left, and then I flipped it on its head. And often what we do is we perform everything backwards. We perform backwards. It's really strange, but when you take every piece of magic you do and you reverse it, you'll find that often it makes more sense. So I'll give you an analogy.
That's interesting.
I'll give you an analogy, a spoon bend or a fork bend. You take a spoon or you take a fork and you bend it with your mind. What are you proving? You're proving that you can leave something in a dishevelled state. You're proving that you can damage something. Are you proving that you go out and bend lampposts? What you're showing here? You know, what's the superpower? We destroy things, and that's ultimately the implication that we're leaving in the participants' minds. So let's flip this on its head and give it a context. Let's say that I sat with you, Chris, and I said that every single one of us has one social stress or pressure that we go through on an everyday basis, and we can often sum those pressures or stresses up into 1 or 2 words. So I'd ask now if you could think of 1 or 2 words that would sum up the pressure that you're currently living through, and I'd hand you a spoon, and I'd say, could you write it in the bowl for me? I'd say, when you've done that, just bend the spoon. Now look, normally you see, you know, a mentalist going, ding, 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 on the side of a glass, right? I think, I don't like it. It's an awkward moment. It's just something I don't like. But I like the fact that when I've handed this to you and you're a female, and I ask you to bend the spoon, people can see you physically struggling to bend that spoon. Right? So now imagine I take that spoon back and I talk about this being a metaphor. It's a metaphor for your problems, and more often than not, the reason that we can't solve our problems is because we're so engrossed in the situation, the likeliness is that we don't see a feasible exit. But because this is a metaphor, we're now viewing this from a fresh perspective, from the outside in. So I ask to take a hand, so she gives me a hand, and I say to her, I want you to imagine a few different ways that you can think about solving this problem or resolving it. And remember, this is going to act as a metaphor, so I'm just pointing that out to the audience. Now, you do, and I say, have you committed to one? And I take her hand and squeeze it a bit tighter, and I say, I want you to imagine playing this situation out in your mind, and you'll see how it has the power to straighten this situation out. And I just sit like this, and now the spoon starts to straighten itself out, right? What's beautiful is that's the audience can't see inside your head. So this is ultimately the metaphor that allows the audience to see what's going on inside here, right?
Yeah.
But what's even more incredible, I talked to Uri about this, and I said, what do you think? And he said, it's great, but giving a straightened spoon out as a souvenir is not very interesting. So I said, yeah, I said, you're right. So I left, and then I thought about it a little bit more. Think about this. Imagine then saying you now know what you need to do in order to resolve that situation. Bending the spoon back and giving it as a souvenir. Every time you solve a little bit of this problem, just straighten the spoon a small amount.
That's
So
so
now, at the end of this, 6 months later, they completely straighten the spoon out themselves. They remember you 6 months later, and they'll always attribute you to solving the problem, even though you did nothing.
That's very powerful.
Right? So what I'm saying is the difference between performing an effect forwards and then flipping it on its head and performing it backwards can be the difference between this contextually making sense and it not. And more often than not, that's where premises become interesting from a television perspective, and that's what I spend most of my time doing these days, is writing it, and that's a long routine for television, but I spend my time writing. And if you ever want to capture something that's fresh on camera, why would you do it the same way that everybody else has done it before you, right? So this is a spectator's mind reader routine, and it completely encapsulates them guessing something you're thinking of. And this is a common debate. You're degrading your power if you let them demonstrate abilities. Well, you're not. That's not the case. From my perspective, I mean, there's big names that say they'd never do this because they have a power that nobody else has. Well, look at it this way. The way that I see it is, if I say to you, you have the exact same power as me. You just need to learn how to tap into it. You might not be perfect, and you could even be 1 digit off on this. It really doesn't matter. You might not be perfect, but if you trust yourself and you trust your instincts, I bet you'd be relatively close. And now you perform this out, right? You perform this routine out, and this is really beautiful moment as you're going through this, because they get to not only experience the powers that you're using, because they're thinking, oh, what could it be? They're feeling, look at me, just think about what you think I'd go for. And they get a little glimpse into this. How can they get a little glimpse into something that doesn't exist? So ultimately, by default, they now are glancing or glimpsing into a world that they're making up in their own head, and when this turns over and it hits, this proves that they must have done something that they wouldn't usually be able to do. And you say to them now, this is exactly what I'm doing, it's just I've had a lot of practice doing this. So they can now not only appreciate what it is that you're doing, but at the same time, they can understand how much work's gone in to get to the level that you're at. And that's the point. How, if you give them a glimpse into this and say this is something you can all do, how can they denounce that as being fake? And if one person does denounce this as being fake, and you say, well, I'll tell you what, why don't you guess something I'm thinking of, and they guess what you're thinking of, and they turn it over, what they're going to turn around and say, I didn't do that, when they just did. How can they denounce something they've just done? It's a skeptic killer straight away, boom.
That's great.
So let's get into the method.
Can we learn it now, please? Thanks. That's awesome.
You'll know.
I'm sitting here. I'm like, yeah. I just want to know how this is done now.
So you'll notice that I used to give stuff away too much. Now I'm keeping it back.
Yeah.
You're dangling that little bit of string.
Are we out of time? Are we out of time now? Do we have to shut the cameras off?
Right. So, should we take a break?
Yeah, just a little break.
So when you hear how this is done, you're just ultimately going to laugh at how simple this is. It's so incredibly simple that it just flies straight over your head. So I look at you and just say, think of a number from 1 to 10 and stick with it. Now, this is the bold variation. This is a variation that I perform every time. I don't care if I'm out. I'm not. It's because it's not me, it's them. And they're ultimately going to be close. So that's fine, right? So I say, just think of a number from 1 to 10 and stick with it. Now, my bet is that if you go up to most people, they'll go for 7. It seems to be a force that works. If you go back to psychological subtleties, you go to the carrot and the stick. It's in the carrot and the stick. You go through there, you'll see there's a series of them. And this is one of them that I thought straight away, well, this is really nice. And I've used it for years and years and years. I put down a deck of cards and I'll put the 7 of hearts on the top and I'll force the 7 of hearts really comfortably. So the scripting essentially is, I just want you to think of a number from 1 to 10 and stick with it. Or you can say, if you're a little bit worried, is say, most people go for a number 3, don't. Think of a number from 1 to 10 and stick with it. And what that does is it kills number 2, it kills number 4, number 1's only a couple away, number 5's only a couple away, like this is, they'll go for 6 or 7. 7 most of the time. So that's a psychological force of 7, and that's all I need to hit. So what I do at that point is I put it on him now. I say, take your time to feel this, don't rush this. Do you feel that the second digit's lower or higher than the first? And he's, what do you mean? I'm saying, do you feel it's lower or higher? Just take your time. And he says, lower. And I say, okay, by how many? And just use your instincts. This seems fair. I'm asking him what his process is. If I were guessing his pin, and he's looking at 4 digits, and I said, is the first digit of your pin higher or lower? And he says, higher. He looks like he's giving me clues now. But it's not. Remember, he's reading me, so I'm asking him what his process is for everybody else. So I say, is the second digit in comparison to the third higher or lower? This is the important point. He says lower by 2. And then I say, okay, the third digit in comparison to the second, higher or lower, and by how many? Take your time to really feel this. And he says lower by 3. I say, now this is the most important one, the last digit. This is going to be in comparison to the third. This is the one that ties the entire string of numbers together. Do you feel it's higher or lower, and by how many? And he says higher by 1. So all I'm doing is I just say to myself 7. 7 minus 2 is 5, so I go 7, 5. And then he says minus 3, so I go 7, 5, 2.
That's great.
And all I'm doing is just following what he's telling me. He's telling me what he thinks my PIN code is if I know the first digit.
I mean, obviously that hit hard because I hit 7. Is there any, like, I mean, obviously people are going to ask, like, is there an out here? Is there something you can do extra to make it like, would you force the 7 perhaps in a more surefire way? Because I know a lot of people, you know, they're not as comfortable performing because perhaps they're new to mentalism. Perhaps they've been doing magic for a while, but now they're getting into mentalism, and these outs to them are a little bit more risky and a little bit more scary. Is there any way to a little bit more surefire to get that 7? Would you force it any other way?
There is. Mark Shandau came up with a really nice thing, and Mark, again, is another nice guy. He takes my material, and he's one of them that he loves to... He's ballsy, but he loves to be surefire. I don't mind, like I say, I'm just...
Sure.
And if you ever follow me and watch me perform, some of the hits that I get are ridiculous.
Yeah, I know.
You know, like, I'll go, I think one of you guys saw me perform the other night, and the girl's crying because I'm hitting stuff that... Not because she's upset, but because she's just like, wow, this is so incredible. And, you know, I'm just following my instincts.
Yeah, girls cry when I perform for other reasons. They're just like, I want to get out of here. He's creeping me out.
Well, it's just, you know, just with that, with this, it's just, again, just follow your instincts. So I always say be bold. Always be bold. Take a chance. Get used to taking a chance, because the faster you get used to feeling this is going to hit, the quicker it's going to start to hit. So Mark Shandau's variation is this. He says to him, you've never read a mind before? No. You've never been able to intuitively pick up on what someone's thinking? No. So he says, right, I'm going to give you a clue. The first digit is odd, and it's higher than a 3, so get a digit in mind. So now it could only be 5, 7, or 9, right? But the line he uses for the second number is really beautiful, because he says, I'm going to give you a clue about the second digit. It's higher than the first. How much higher do you think it is? Now that eliminates the 9, meaning that this could only be a 5 or a 7.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
So what he does is he follows the process out in his head. He'll write the one up for 7, because that's the one that he thinks comes off more often than not. Places that into his pocket, and he says, be honest, did you think the first digit were a 5? And they go, yes. And then he goes, the second digit's this, and he'll speak it out loud. And that out's something I came up with for the name guess years and years ago. Yes, do you think the next one's a 1? Yes. Do you think the next one's a 6? Whatever, and they'll say yes. And he'll follow it through verbally. If they say, no, it's not, he'll say, oh, what did you think the code was? And then they'll say, you know, 7523, and they'll say, yeah, take a look at that.
That's great.
Boom. So it could only be 2 outcomes the way Mark does it. So just to
can we go over that one more time? So,
yeah. So odd digit higher than a 3.
So you got an odd digit. I'm thinking of an odd digit. It's higher than a 3.
Right, okay.
Right.
So now, the only clue I'm going to give you about the second digit is higher than the first. So get that in mind.
Right. That's great. The fact that I like that you say the only clue that I'm going to give you. As in you're trying to help them,
and it's a restriction, you know.
That's great. That's so great. So I'm going to help you try to guess my PIN. I'll give you a small clue because you're not new to mind reading. You're new to mind reading, so.
And that's it, yeah, man. So, and if you wanted to take it a step further, there's a principle called the Bob principle that I'm not going to go into depth on, because if you want to read into that, if you check out Bigger Fish 2, it's a book of mine. You find that on eBay somewhere. I don't have any copies of it. Or I think there's a brief mention of it in When in Rome. So if you go into When in Rome, you can have a look there. There's a really beautiful, essentially it's the way of whispering absolutely anything that anybody's thinking of. So I'm really interested in children's stories, right? Massively interested in kids' stories. I have George's Marvellous Medicine at the side of my bed, The Enchanted Wood on the other side. So no matter which side I wake up on or go to sleep at, because I sleep on my own. No matter which side I wake up at, I've got one of these children's books down. And I really love the imagery that these books create. And there's this one scene where the children move from the city to the country in the Enchanted Wood. It's Enid Blyton, if you want to check it out. They jump across the beck, and there's this really beautiful scene where they say that the trees are darker than any other trees they've ever seen. And they're communicating to each other in whispers. in a language that we're never going to understand. And I thought that were really incredible that they were whispering stuff that each other would understand, but we'd never quite understand what it was that they were saying. So I thought up a host of routines based around that. And this is one of them. If you want to do the introduction bit, but not let everybody else know that you're giving them these kind of clues, what you can always do is you can say, have you ever done this before? No. So I'm going to teach you the secrets of how I do this, but I don't want everybody else knowing. This is a gift from me to you. Now, if at any point I tell you what the PIN code is or any of the numbers, call me out. If I tell you to play along, call me out. These are your friends, and I want you to feel that you can do that at any point. So now I start to whisper. I say, this is all about looking at me and just using your feelings. This is about just knowing what the number is without having to think too much. Now the first, and I'm whispering this, the first digit is higher than a 3 and it's odd. So get that in mind now. You're going to look at me when I lean out and you're going to tell me the rest of the numbers off your own back. But it's essential you follow your instincts and feelings, and anything that you think is popping up in between, just erase it from your mind. If you got that, they nod and I lean out. I say, now I've told you what you need to look for in order to be able to read me. I've not told you what the numbers are. You genuinely don't know what the PIN code is at this point. No. Get the first digit in mind now. Yes, right? Nobody's heard me whisper that little bit of process at the start.
That whole force is invisible to non-existent to everybody. So so if you want to eliminate that force from people's memory, that's a great way of doing it.
And then all you have to say is...
It's almost like a dual reality thing.
Well, this is it. So this is the beautiful line. So when you get to the second digit, then you say, the only clue I'm going to give you is that the second digit's higher. So everybody thinks now in the audience the only clue you've ever given is one clue.
Like 3, yeah.
And you've given them like 3 clues. Yeah. So and then they get right to the end of this, they turn it around. You saw the reaction that the room had. You know, it's like, wow.
That's incredible.
It hits, this hits hard, you know, no matter who you're performing this to. So if we put this back on the sticks and we will move on.
Let's go on to another.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any questions for this? Anybody have any sort of...
Any questions come up from the people at home? Because I don't want to feel that we're jumping over them.
I mean, we do have questions, but most of them are going to be answered in the Q&A afterwards. So thank you for your patience, guys. I think Thomas is about to go to bed because he's just falling asleep and he's got school
That's good.
in Germany. But he says, thanks for the great lecture and you're a great guy.
Thank you.
He wants to know if there's any tips for performing for male spectators, if that makes any sense.
I think that a lot of the time, not because we think that what we're doing is going to be appealing to women, but because they're an easier audience, because they tend to believe in what we're doing
They're
more.
more emotional as well. And
just if you have any separation in your mind, so will they. That's it. So if you see them as acting or being any different to a female, then they'll act different.
Right.
You know, it's as simple as that. It really is. If you start, because you give off a weird vibe. You know, if you've ever lived with a woman, you know, and Thomas, and you, like, if you, I bet you know when your mum's wound up and she doesn't have to say anything to you. You know, she's had a bad day at work, she comes home, you just know she's annoyed, and that's just because we give off vibes, and that's what we do as people. You know, so just if you just don't separate the two in your mind, they're both the same. Neither of them know what you know. They don't have the same knowledge you have. They don't have the same backing and grounding that you have.
Sure.
You just got to try and make it seem personal to them. And a lot of the time, you know, the thing about guys is it's interesting. When they're amongst other guys, they want to seem macho and they want to seem tough and everything else. But secretly, you know, every single one of them's just as underconfident as the last one. You know, because ultimately they have to be more confident in a group. You know, they feel more confident in a group. And when you step in there and you start to get inside their mind and their most private thoughts, at the end of the day, to them, it doesn't matter if they could punch you or kick you. You know everything. To them, you know everything about them. All the private secrets, all the stuff they don't want their girlfriends knowing, everything you know about them. You know, so that's how you got to look at it. And don't think about it in a macho sense. But what I mean is that from their perspective, they're ultimately going to be more worried about what you know than what you think of them.
Sure.
It's like a spider.
Great.
Really. Yeah, man. Well, let's quickly wrap up this section with Mark's question. Could you pick someone at random for me?
Yeah. Could we be extra random?
You can pick whoever you want. It doesn't matter to me.
The cameraman? Can we do that?
Can you get off the camera for a second? Or can you do that? If you can't, it doesn't matter.
Sure. Do you want to be part of this?
Can everybody hear George? Do you want to hand these down to George?
Yeah.
Have you got a pen there, George?
Yeah.
I want you to think of a private piece of information. You did have a pen until you dropped it. I want you to think of a private piece of information, and I want you to write that piece of information down, right? So, yeah, just write it down. In fact, instead of writing it, Don't, just put it in your pocket, it's fine. I'll just try this without. Put it into your pocket and put the pen away. Yeah, let's create a triangle of telepathy. Have you got your phone on you, Fred?
Yeah.
Let's try to answer this question that Mark asked in the most sensational way, right?
Okay.
Go to your calculator for me. Mark said, you know, do you ever find that there's a time where this becomes less powerful? And I said, the only time I only ever really perform this is when the spectator says, I'm not giving you my phone, I want to type in a code and you're not going to touch it.
Right, okay.
Right. So just, this is important, George. You're not thinking of a code now, that's important.
No.
Okay, that's good. That's important, right? Keep it towards yourself, Fred. So let's pretend that you're the angry spectator that don't want to hand me the phone, don't want me to look at this. So I say, okay, well, we'll create a code that surrounds events in your life and only your life. It's not going to be important to anybody else. Quickly punch in the 4-digit number that, wait a second. Let's make it the year that you were born, just quickly. Now, bear in mind, if I went around and I were to ask everybody in this room, the likeliness is that the year that they were born would be different to the year that Fred were born, right? Now press the plus key for me, Fred, and I want you to think about a year that's special to you, not one that's on Facebook, not one that's profilable in any sense, one that you're just going to think of now that you've not thought of for a while, but genuinely is important to you. And when you've got that, press a plus, punch that in 4-digit form. Now again, bear in mind, Chris, if this were you, this would be a different year.
Sure.
You know, if this was Benny, this would be a different year. You know, if this were Joe, this would be a different year. For every single one of us in this room, based on probability, the likenesses would be different. Press the plus key and put your age in, and then press equals. So, bearing in mind, let's say we were born on the same year, which I think by looking you can tell we wasn't. My special year occurred in 2010, which I'm assuming is different to yours. Let's say I put +5 because it's been 5 years since my special year. The likeliness is that I'd be different to yours, right?
Way different.
So press plus and the amount of years it's been since yours. So even if coincidentally we happened to be born on the same year, he's putting in the amount of years, that would make the total astronomically different, as you just heard. Press equals, you have a total there, right?
Yeah.
Can you remember this total?
Yep.
Lock the phone. This should be like 4 or 5 digits long.
It's 4 digits.
Okay, you can erase all that out, it's fine, I'm not going to touch it. Put that away. So let's have a look at this. George, you're thinking of a private piece of information?
Yeah.
Fred, you've created a PIN code, you're playing the rowdy spectator that doesn't want me to touch your phone. Let's make this interesting. In your mind, Fred, mix the numbers up. So just keep thinking of different numbers in that series of numbers. George, you keep thinking of letters in that piece of information. Just keep changing your mind, right? So the first thing I'm feeling here, there's a 0 in yours, yes? And an R in yours? Yes, look at me. A 2?
No.
No, look at me, look right. No, it's a 3. Perfect, look at me. An A in yours, yes? Yours starts with a 4.
Yeah.
An I? Not an S in there, is there? Yes, an S as well. Yes. Look at me. 403. Just so everybody's on the same page, by the way, he's thinking of his astrological sign now. Look at me. Aries, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
4030.
Yeah.
And that's 2 for 2. That's a triangle of telepathy, right? So, it's cool, and ultimately fair, and I didn't know that, George, about you. You genuinely didn't know you were going to be thinking of your astrological sign. That's important. And again, that there is genuinely numbers surrounding your life, right? This seems ultra cool, right? It seems ultra cool, ultra fair, and it's ultra
on
fast.
so many levels.
Right, it's ultra fast. So let's break this down, because there's little pieces of everybody's work sprinkled into. Did you enjoy that? Yeah? Did it look all right?
It was okay. It's all right.
And so it looks ultra good, and it feels real. It's quick moving, it's quick paced.
Yeah, I loved it.
So I don't know if anybody figured this out. Anybody watching this that knows about astrological signs should have. Well, I don't think you would have figured it out, because you could have thought of any piece of information. Right. That's the beautiful bit with this, right? So ultimately, let me show you what happened. I picked these up, and I haven't got
the cards back from George.
Yeah, can I have the cards back, George, so you can see what the card says. So there's a nice little dual reality here, right? So this dual reality first came about back in my confession interview with Kennedy, and in the confession interview, I did a thing called the first kiss. And essentially, I didn't want the audience knowing that I wanted the person thinking of a first kiss. So I'd write, think of your first kiss, write it here with an X. I'd fold the billet, I'd put a paperclip on it, or a pen lid, if I were going to give them the pen as well. And I'd say, so I want you to take this, you're going to open it and you're going to let a random piece of information pop in mind that only you're going to know. You're going to write it down and just commit to it. That's as simple as it is, right? So they open this piece of card, they then write down what it is and they lock it, and ultimately I peek at it. But I know they're thinking of the first kiss, but nobody else in the room knows that I'm thinking of the first kiss. Nobody else knows that, right? And I'm not going to reveal that till later on in the game. So what I used to do is reveal how the kiss felt, reveal how this felt, reveal that, and then I'd say, oh, and just so everybody's on the same page, you're thinking of the first kiss, and they'd say, yes, right? And if people started to react, I'd do the Dunninger modesty thing and say, no, 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 please, please.
That's not what we're...
Right? That's not what this is about. So, and to everybody else in the room, they'd think I was just being modest. To the person I was performing this on, they'd think, oh, he's saying it's irrelevant because he asked me to think of a first kiss.
Yeah.
But what's beautiful is by saying, oh, just so we're on the same page, it's almost as if I've forgotten about it, this is the first kiss. That stops him then later on saying, oh, yeah, he asked me to think of his first kiss, because he thinks I've already told everybody now.
Right.
So why does it matter? So I thought about that for a while, and then, you know, Michael, again, so this was soundboarding from Michael. Michael took it and he's used it for something, and he has something coming out. I can't tell you the name because I don't know the name because he hasn't told me yet. But he got that, he loved it. Then he came up with something that were even better, where he'd hand them it, and he's saying, you know what, and it's something that he could force them, or something that he could reveal without having to, use regular methods. So it could be an anagram, it could be a peek, it could be whatever you wanted, but in a different way to the norm. So instead of having him writing it and peeking it there, I don't ultimately know what he's using it for yet. He's kept that cloak and dagger, but he come back to me with a concept and I loved it. So this is what I come up with from that. I thought, wouldn't it be great if I could do this with a star sign? So if you ask George what he saw, when he got this and he took these pieces of paper, it said to George, think of your astrological sign and write it here. So that's what George got when he got that piece of paper. So I made that very fast paced. I tried to keep it quick.
Can we show that to the camera?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So this is what it says. It just says, think of your astrological sign and write here. So I'll show this to camera 3 and camera 2, if you could just grab that. So, and you could genuinely pick anybody in this room. It really doesn't matter, because I'll point to other people and I'll do this again in a moment, just so you see how clean and fast this is.
And
right?
we've got a performance of this as well on video, which we can take a look at afterwards.
Yeah, we didn't set it up onto here. We just no, we didn't. Actually, I wanted to do this live in the audience. I thought it'd be nicer because
You'd rather do
we
it live?
we already played a couple of clips, so we do have it to play. But before that we run this, I said that I'd rather do it live. I think it's nicer to show you this. So as I give these across, I show Chris them and I just hand them to Chris like this. So Chris takes them, hand them across, quickly hand them back there. Now this wouldn't normally be passed back as far as that, but what's happening is when George receives these, George receives them with a question on. To everybody else looking here, you've seen a blank stack of cards sat here the entire time. Normally in a live environment, can we pass these back down? So when you got that instantly, you just thought of your star sign, right, George? And you didn't think too much more, right? Which is good. Ultimately, if I were doing this in a live scenario, this would be on the top. I've also, and you're probably not going to be able to come in this close, marked the top corner of the billet.
Just in case.
Just so I know the orientation of the card. Remember I said earlier, preparation, you know, it prevents the failure. So I'm taking this, and I'm just flashing these, you know, as I'm talking. Let's say that this is a ridiculous length to be able to pass a billet to. Normally this would be done close up. I'd say I want you to take this, and I want you to take this pen. And they're reading this, and I want you to write down, and that's it. Boom. So the line I use is, in a moment, you're going to write down a private and personal piece of information. It's going to be personal to you. No one else in this room is going to know this piece of information.
So to them, everything you say is true.
It's true, yes.
Because their astrological sign is a private and personal piece of information, so there's nothing strange there.
So when I bring this, I'm rotating it like this, and if they're sat here, if they're sat there, I just hold it like this, and this is the move. I'll do this for camera 2. I hold it with my middle finger here, and I say, what I want you to do for me is I want you to write this piece of information here.
That's great.
So I'm saying,
you get that?
You're going to take, and I'll hold it back up again.
That's
so
so great.
you're going to take this piece of card, and you're going to write this piece of information here. So what I'm doing there is I'm holding it with my middle finger, I'm doing this, this.
And to everybody else,
From
you've
the
done
back,
nothing.
it
You've
looks like this. It just looks like, so you're going to write this piece of information here.
That's
right?
so great.
That's it. So
That's
nobody
really
else in the entire room knows that they're writing their astrological sign.
That's really good.
Right? Nobody else knows that.
I love that.
So boom, boom. It's as simple as that. So we're all on the same pages here. You hand it across, they take a look at it, they write down a personal, private piece of information, and I say, be honest, is there any way anybody could know this? No. So I ask then, Fred to create a PIN code, and I thought it tied in really beautifully with Mark's question, because I would just is that if somebody, you know, the only time I'd ever do a PIN code again is if somebody said, I don't want you touching the phone, so I'll have them just do this. And this is essentially something called the life equation, and I called it the life equation. I can't remember what it were initially called. It were just a number. That's all it was. It was in 202 Methods of Forcing, and I have the Demon series by Anneman. That's the first place I saw it, and then it was taken and it was put into Practical Mental Effects, and there were a variation of it, or a variant called It's a Knockout by Henry Fesch. So if you want to open Practical Mental Effects, you can go back to whichever edition you get, the Dover edition or the Holdsworth edition, whichever one. Most likely you'll have the 83 Dover edition. You open it up, you go through. I can't 100% remember what page it's on. The impromptu frame-ups start probably at about page 90.
And this is for that number.
And it's just after that. Yeah. This is for that number. But I'll run through how to get it just briefly, and you can rewind the lecture. So instead of going over the aspects of the performance over and over and over again, because I want to spend more time talking about the astrological sign. What you're doing there is you are ultimately, for the number, asking them to type in the year they were born, then a special year, and they're adding these together, 4 digits, the year they were born, a special year, their age, and then after that, the amount of years it's been since their special year. And you'll find that this always totals 4029. Well, it's always double the current year, but this is the rule of thumb. Is your birthday has occurred this year already, right?
Yeah, I've already done.
Right, so even though it has nothing to do.
Reading. That's like another hit right there.
Well, I know that, and the reason I know that is because it was 4030 and not 29, right? The only time it's going to be 30 is if their birthday is already passed, which seemingly has nothing to do. Which seemingly has nothing to do with the equation. Right. I never asked it because I like that moment of going, and there's a 2. No, this is a 3.
Don't get me wrong. That seemed fair and random to everybody here, I'm sure, because the way he explained it as well is that, you know, you were born in a different, and even if you were born in the same year, your special year is different, so this number's different. I mean, it seemed fair.
Play it back for the performance.
It still doesn't make sense to me how this works. It's like one of those things that just does work.
Well, the reason it works is because if you think about this, so take the year you were born and add your age to it, and it'll equal 2015. Right. So you take their special year, and then how many years it's been since then, and it's 2015. So it's
just doubles the year.
Just doubles whatever year you're in. Yeah. So essentially that's it. That's how this force works. Okay. And that's how it were outlined in the initial book, and everybody dismissed it and said this is no good for anything. So the presentation that I come up with, just to briefly outline it, is this line of, you know, punch in 4 digits, and as they go about to do it, in fact, put in the year you were born, that's something personal to you. This wouldn't be the same for you. You, based on probability, it'd be different for everybody in this room. And they say, press the plus key. And now think of a year that's special to you, one that's not on Facebook, not profilable in any sense, maybe one that you haven't thought about for a while, but is inevitably more special to you than anybody else. So they do that, they punch that in 4-digit form, and I say, put your age in. Now, this is where I've changed it the most, and they press equals. I say, is there any way I could know this number? No. And I don't know it at that point. I'm being 100% honest, I don't know it. Because I don't know, you know. So I say, you know, there's no way I could know this number. But let's look at things for a second. Even if we were coincidentally born in the same year, my special year was 2010. I'm going to assume yours is not. And if it's not, that's fine. But most of the time, if you just get that case where it is and someone says, yeah, it is, it's the same, I turn around and say, okay, well, I think you can tell we're born on different years, so it's going to be different anyway. Sure. But the point I make is that I've only ever had one person in the entire time I've performed this say, yeah, it's the same. But I say, my special year occurred in 2010, that's 5 years ago. And I just make it look like I've not done this before by going, no, it's 5 years ago. So if I press +5 now, because your special year were different and it's a different amount of years, and you went, yeah, we're different, which is beautiful because it's that beautiful moment now where when you press plus whatever in and press equals, I say, so there's no way this could be the same as mine. It'd be, you know, theoretically impossible. And then I say this, so this should represent a PIN code. It's like 4 or 5 digits long. He says, yeah, 4. I'm saying I don't know if it's 4 or 5.
Right.
See what I mean? I do. I know that the number's 4029 or 4030. So just to reiterate, if their birthday has
that's a lot of math to do. Like for you, like they would.
Yeah.
You know, if they think that you're calculating with, that's a lot of math to do.
Yeah, they won't ever do it. So you just, but it seems like again, it goes back to the most PIN codes are inspired by either A, an express lifestyle, or B, a life event or a series of life events that are that memorable, we translate it into a series of numbers that represent a PIN code.
Sure.
So what you're doing is, you know, you're making it seem fair and congruent, and it's that beautiful moment when somebody says, you're not touching this phone, I'm going to type 4 digits in. Do you know what you do? Instead of saying, no, that, you know, let's move on to something else and panicking, remember what I said earlier, it's about the same with the hands, with these two hands where his favourite numbers here and the codes here. I'm changing the variables of performance. It's up to me to control.
Sure. They don't know where you're going.
It's up to me to control the situation. So you know what I do at that point? I say, all right. I says, who's up for making this even more impossible? And why is everybody going, no, let's not. Let's just keep it at this. They're going to go, yeah, let's make it more impossible. I say, all right, well, do I know anything about you? No. So why don't we create a PIN code that's inspired by your life events? And if I guess it, I think that not only proves that I'm guessing the code, but it means that I'm also getting a look into your private life, right? And then everyone's going, yeah, this sounds more fair now. And I say, okay. So without touching that phone, I'm controlling the variables behind the phone over here, right? But the most beautiful thing is the tying these two together, and there's a very specific reason why I tie these together. But before we do, let me show you what this can look like, what it can look like when you're performing this very quickly. And this is just a star sign divination. So we're going to roll the clip, and this is an Indian restaurant that we went to eat at. Pete, your name is?
B.
B. Now, B, it's absolutely essential for everybody at home to know we have nothing set up. You don't know what's about to happen. Literally, we're at the restaurant. We've come in, said, can we just use you for a stunt? And you've said yes. So, B, this is what I want you to do. I want you to take this, and I want you to write down a private piece of information. So take it, look here, and just write down a piece of information. In fact, just think of this piece of information. Could you do that? Just think it'd be better. So I don't want anyone thinking at home that maybe I looked at the card or maybe I peeked it in some sense. So just imagine this piece of information written out in the air and think of the exact amount of letters. Done that, yes? Yep. So give me your hands. So I'll tell you what I'm feeling straight away. So you are a headstrong personality type. I'd say somebody who's fairly confident. Have you recently moved? You're planning on moving though, right? Yes, you're thinking about it because that's on the back of your mind. I'd say as well, this piece of information is representative of, I'd say, a go-getter, outgoing. Actions speak louder than words. Okay. Just so everybody knows at home, you're thinking of an astrological sign. Look at me. Okay, I think I've got this. Leo, right?
Damn!
Damn!
Son of a god.
Great reaction.
It is. So
quickly, do you think like holding them? You're a very physical person. You like touching. I'm just on a tangent here, but I noticed that a lot about your performances that you like tapping people, holding people's hands. Do you think that adds something to it?
Yeah, it's creating a visual process that I think's ultimately really, really important because it, you know, when you're touching somebody's hands or you're touching someone's shoulder or the leg or you tell them to look at you. I'm very forceful when I say look at me. I say that 2 or 3 times in every performance because ultimately I want everybody to feel that this is important. There's something going on here. If I just look at somebody and, I mean, I can rapid fire like this. This is what I call shotgun reveals, which is sometimes good. You know, I said at the start that it's nicer to drag it out, but sometimes if you're moving at a slow pace, this bam, bam,
that was
bam,
great.
bam, bam, it gives it that nice shotgun boxing.
And you're getting reactions like yes, oh my God, yes, and everybody's just sort of being built up. It's great.
Be honest, does anybody have a clue how that works?
Vaguely.
Vaguely, okay. And I think you might have read this in the When in Rome.
Yeah.
So this is so cool, right? And essentially, at the start of most star sign anagrams, I always say, and this is the cups principle. Again, I'm pointing out Michael's stuff here, right? It's really cool because I have the anagram, and the anagram itself's mine, the reading's mine, and everything else. But there were always that horrible moment, and I didn't want to use it in yours. And the reason I didn't want to use it in yours, because I wanted to outline it in this, is there's this beautiful moment where I say to somebody, can you think of the exact amount of letters for me? And he said, yes, quickly. Now, I know he's thinking of an astrological sign, right? I know it because I've given the card that says think of that, right? So as soon as he says yes, quickly, I know this is Leo, straight away. And I'm in the best, I'm in the best frame of mind.
Why do you know that's Leo, just so everybody understands?
Because if I say
Because it's the only star sign
that's really short.
with
If,
three
if
letters.
it were Capricorn, he'd have thought for a few seconds, you know.
But even if it was, let's say Cancer, or if it was, that's still like 5 or 6 letters. You still, or 4 letters. You still have to like think about it for a second. Where Leo is probably the only one you can.
Yeah, man. So that's what it is with this, and
That's
that's
great.
why it was just quick, and I took a
Nice.
guess at it, and I always will. But what's nice is I'd give the reading. Now, you guys couldn't hear in studio because the mics were off. But the moment I said, "Have you recently moved?" and he says, "No," I said, "But you're thinking about it." "Yeah, I am thinking about it." Everyone in the studio laughed because, again, just shows you how powerful that line is. Because we're, you know, human nature is that we're constantly on the move, we're constantly on the go, we're constantly wanting to get out and sort of do. And so I just wanted to point out that when you're doing this part of the performance, which I will show you in studio again, just how beautiful this can look. Now let me show you this on its own. So is there anybody that would like to be a participant in this? Anybody at all? It's up to you. So, Mike.
Yep.
Now, Mike, I'm not going to ask you to think of your star sign. The reason I'm not going to ask you to think of your star sign is because if I've got you on Facebook, then people are going to think that I've profiled you in some way. You can change your mind as many times as you want. It really doesn't matter to me and commit on a star sign, right? Imagine it written in the air for me. And give me a yes when you're doing that so everybody else can hear clearly.
Any star sign?
Any star sign you want, yes.
Okay, done.
Tell me when you're seeing it.
Seeing it.
Okay. Think of the exact amount of letters. You done that?
Yep.
So now, just see it like Leo really largely here, right? Is Leo right? So I think he went for Leo again to try to catch me out there, which is good, but you could see I got it straight away. And the reason I got it straight away is because I know that it took him a quick amount of time to think of the amount of letters. That's all. But let's do this again and think of a different one for me.
Okay.
You got it?
Yeah.
Now, see the amount of letters in your mind?
Yeah.
Okay. Have you done that? Have you got that? It's fine, it doesn't matter. If you can't, just see it written in the air. Look right at me. It's fine, it doesn't matter, Mike. Just see it in the air, right? So I want you to make this as interesting as possible. Instead of just thinking about these cyclically, I want you to mix them up in your mind. So interweave them, think of different letters. So there's no way that I could just look at you and go, you know, read your lips or whatever. Stop. Go back. There's an R there, yes?
Yeah.
Look at me. And an A as well, yeah?
Yeah.
Look at me. There's not an I in there, is there?
There is.
Good, you're doing great. Look right at me. Hold your hands flat for me. Okay, I'm slightly lapsing here. An S?
No.
No, could you look at me? Just look right at me.
Yeah.
Okay, so I feel with you straight. You can put your hands down now. I give the reading. You're a headstrong personality type, a Capricorn.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect, right? Woo! So I can do this pretty much every single time. And this is just an anagram. It's just basically I'm going to write down the anagram for you all in a moment to take a look at and how this works, because I'd like to go into a little bit of depth on this sort of stuff. But ultimately, anybody watching that, after a few times, can pretty much deduce that it's an anagram. And I think the thing that took everybody by storm with this one is because everybody thinks that George is thinking of absolutely any piece of information.
That's right. That's right.
When the anagram comes into play, it'd be impossible for me to anagram it because firstly
Could be
there's
any word.
a vast amount of information. So that's where I took the Michael thing of looking at it and putting it away. And then he inspired this, and now Michael... you are seeing this, Michael, so this is what you inspired. So that's how Michael work, and we constantly work and ricochet off each other's stuff until we ultimately have the best ways to use it. And so that's what this inspired, this new thing.
But you, as a performer, I mean, I could probably say, like, yes, maybe if you look at it 3-4 times that you start to figure it out, but even if you say to them, think of a star sign, and then bam, 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 I think that's still really powerful.
It's
because
cool
it seems to me like you named 3 letters, and then that's what it seemed to me anyways, that you named like 3 letters, and all of a sudden you guessed their astrological sign. So, I mean, it's
cool.
Really
it is cool, but I think that anybody who's anagrammed for a long time, you get to feel that it isn't as strong as it could be.
Right, almost like a thumb tip guilt. Like
yeah, it just becomes something that just doesn't make any congruent sense.
Sure.
So it's something that's very hard to justify in any way unless you're painting it as a picture, they're looking down, they're seeing it on a plaque, whatever. But what I find nice is you imagine now, right, doing this with 2 people, and I ask Fred to mix his number up and whatever George is thinking of to mix up in his mind, right? So now I don't name the first number, I know it's going to be 4029 or 4030, right? So what I do with you is I point out there's a 2 in this, right? And if I get a no straight away there, I say, no, this is a 3, right? Yes. Boom. there's an R in yours, yes. A 0 in yours, yes. An A in yours. And I'm doing the anagram, but you've mixed your numbers up. So it only seems fair you'd mix your letters up. And because I'm going backwards and forwards like this, the anagram's so well hidden now. But even more beautifully, and this is the little secret. People say to me, would you ever have, if you were doing it for one person, would you just do the anagram for the star sign? I'd still probably get you to create the pin code, and the reason being is, look at what we've got. As soon as I know that he says 4030, I know his birthday's already occurred. So by throwing that 3 out at the start and him saying no, I say no, sorry, if I say it's a 2 and you go, no, I say, no, it's a 3, isn't it? Yes, boom. 6 months have just disappeared from the star sign anagram, right? So that tells me now that he's either a Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, Aries, Taurus, or a Gemini, right? So straight away it tells me that he's one of those star signs, and maybe on, if it's just occurred and we're in the middle of the year, maybe onto the cusp of, say, Cancer, right? Maybe onto the cusp of that, right? But we're not yet. So his star sign is going to be one of those. So when I anagram down now, so let's say that I ask you to think of your sign, and I ask you to think of the exact amount of letters, right? So concentrate on it. So when I throw it out, let's do this slow so you can all see what's happening here, right? And I'll try to break it down verbally, and then I'll write it down and bring a close-up in on the camera so you can pause on it. So nice and slow. We'll pretend we're doing this in slow motion. So there's an R in there.
Yeah.
Yes. And an A as well? There's not an I in there, is there?
Yeah.
You're doing great. Okay, this is where I'm lapsing slightly now. So now what I do is I readjust myself. So let's look what's happened when there's... So when he says that there's an R in there, that eliminates Leo, which I've already eliminated because of the length of the letters, Pisces and Gemini, right? So I've already eliminated those 3.
Just with one
right?
letter.
Just with one letter, without saying anything. I say, is there an R in there? He said, yes, right? So now, because he said that there's an R inside this, it's eliminated another branch. And when I write these down, you'll see what the branch is. Then I say A, and if he says yes, that's eliminated another 2. I say, there's not an I in there, is there? And he says, yes, there is, right? Which now eliminates another 2. So my feeling, are you an Aries?
No.
No, okay, so an S in there?
Yeah.
Yeah? So Aquarius. So now it's Aries or Aquarius, and I did bet on the 2. And the only reason I know it's Aquarius at this point is because I threw out the S at this point. He said yes. He's told me it's not Aries, right?
So you put the S in.
So it's either going to be them. So I know that it's Aquarius and not Sagittarius, because Sagittarius occurs at the back end of the year. Aquarius appears at the start. So all I'm saying is with the 4030 thing, you can reduce it by 6 months straight away. And ultimately make your anagram a lot easier than it normally would be.
Right.
You could probably take a guess, to be honest with you. You know,
just be bold about it.
Well, if it comes up 4030 and he's reduced half of the year away from me without me doing anything. So just by guessing this code, 4030, now I've reduced down, and I could probably take a punt at roughly what month I believe he's born in and guess the star sign. If you wanted to be really bold, and I probably would do that, but... But yeah, so the anagramming process, let's take a look at this, and this is where we're going to need to come in, but give me...
Just before, you do this wonderful thing that I've seen you do as well, where if you do miss one of those, so if you do miss one of those...
Please, yeah, that'd be great.
Those letters, you say, okay, well, you've been giving me the letters, but it's not coming through. Could you picture this animal? Could you picture this? So you jump from letters to a picture to justify that it's not coming through. You say you're more of a creative person. You know, you did something along the lines of, I'm probably butchering it, but yeah.
No. So when I first saw this were What's My Sign? Or I think it was What's My Sign or What's Your Sign? What's My Sign? Bob Farmer. That was the very first place I saw this. Then I reread it again in Testosterone 120%, which is Chester Sass. And to be honest with you, I've not had too many dealings with reading astrological stuff. I like to make my own stuff. I don't tend to read too much into it unless I'm checking for credit. Alan New had a good variation in this. But what I found for the most part is people's anagram were R-I-A-S-E, which is Raya. You know, like it's not even a word, so it were mnemonically difficult to remember on the fly. So what I do is I change one specific part of this. When I get to the I say, there's not an I in there. And if they say, yes, there is, I say, you're doing incredibly. If they say, no, there isn't, I say, you're doing incredibly. Like, either way, it's a double-barreled question. You know, so let's say that you were thinking of Taurus, right? And I said, there's an R in there, yes? Yep, and an A as well. You have to say this out loud so everyone can hear you. Right? And I make sure that I'm getting them to specify so everyone can hear. And that's really for me, nobody else, but I want everybody to hear. There's not an I in there, is there?
No.
You're doing incredibly. Could you see this is a picture for me? Right?
It doesn't even feel like a
It
miss.
doesn't feel like a miss.
Yeah,
and
it feels
I've
like a
realised that
definite
a lot of the time, that's really important, because in most star sign anagrams or zodiac anagrams, you get 2 no's. And I never liked that 2 no moment. I never liked the 2 no moment. If I get a no at one point, that's fine, because what I do is when let's say I'm coming to Capricorn, which is the last one that you thought of, and I say I'm really struggling with this. So I think, you know, I don't know, is there an S in there? And I throw it out as if I'm not sure, and you go no. I say, okay, we're going to have to approach this from a different angle. Could you see it as a picture? And if they say yes, I say great. I say, visualize the picture. And I readjust for the picture. If they say no...
So it's almost like because it was in letter form, that's what
I'm
was
struggling.
making you
Yeah,
struggling.
I'm struggling. Some people think aesthetically, some people think analytically, right? So working out how somebody thinks is part of the process.
So analytically would be the letters, aesthetically would be the
Yeah,
picture.
it would be the picture. So
That's great.
pictures on numbers.
Yep.
So I'm going to get into a full performance in a moment of just the anagram on its own, because this is easy. If you rewind the video for the number, remember it's just the special year, sorry, the year they were born, the special year, their age, the amount of years since the special year. That's all you need to know for that, and you can rewind the performance. And then I'm backwards and forwards, piggybacking off this number, because he's mixed this up, to be able to reveal the star sign that's mixed up over here. You could just say, can you focus on your sign? And do it that way. You don't have to be cloak and dagger about it if you don't feel safe doing that. Again, I just wanted to show you that you can sometimes ask somebody to think of something without even saying, and then later on say, oh yeah, and just so we're all on the same page, George is thinking of his astrological sign. You know, why not take that extra moment where for a few seconds everybody's like, what's going on, you know? So, essentially I use the word raise. So essentially these are the letters that you're going to be throwing out, the word raise, R-A-I-S-E. Now the way that we're going to be doing this is asking them to focus on the amount of letters. So if they're very quick with this, we know it's Leo straight away. If you're not as bold as I am, don't go for it, because it could be Virgo or Libra. It could be, right? It could be. You'll have to excuse my scrappy doctor's handwriting. But if we get a no on the R, so I say, is there an R in there? And I get a no, I move off up here. This is gone. Pisces and Gemini.
That's the only possible.
That's the only possible it could be at this point.
On the first question, if they say no,
that's it. Boom, you're done.
You're done.
If it comes down to a yes, we move down to A. So I say, is there an A in there? If they say no, so I'll just turn this. If they say no, we move up to Virgo or Scorpio. By asking, can you see this as a picture? If you get a yes straight away, it's Scorpio. It's as quick as that, because if they struggle a little bit and say, yeah, or look like they're wincing, Virgo, it's just based on the reaction. If you're that worried about which it is, and you're not as bold again, you can use the Darren thing, where you're just saying, you know, just repeat this in your mind, like Virgo, 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 Virgo. If they react, boom, they react, and that's it, done. If they don't react, you know it's Scorpio. Yeah. So this is all backwards in and forwards in, and it seems like a lot of process, but look how quick it was. This is all based on how you want to present this, right? So we come down, if they say yes, and they say, is there an... So this is a line that's important. There's not an I in there, is there? That's a double-barreled question. If they say yes, you say, great, you're doing perfect, just keep focusing. If they say no, you just say, great, you're doing amazing, just keep focusing on this for me. And then I change the game. In fact, could you see this as a picture for me? They say yes, Taurus. They say, if they look like they're wincing slightly, Cancer. Again, if you're struggling, because you know, if you think they're committed to it really quickly, just keep saying, repeat in your mind over and over and over and over again, like Taurus, 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 Taurus. Keep doing that for me. If you notice reaction, boom, you've hit. If not, it's Cancer. You come down now if it's a yes to an S. If you get a no, it's Libra or Capricorn. You should see by the length of the letters here whether this is Libra or Capricorn. You should see that, yeah? Again, if you're worried, you just use the repeater thing. That's all that's going to keep happening here. If you get a yes on that, it's going to be Aquarius, Sagittarius. So if you get a yes and a no, it's going to be Aquarius, Sagittarius. If you get a yes, it's going to be Aries. Essentially, you're just following this all the way down until a point you get a no, and then you move up. So you should have had enough time to have this on screen to understand. I'm going to now perform this again as a full performance with just the anagram, but I'm going to flower it up presentationally, right?
Okay.
So I'm going to place this down for a second, and I'm going to do this just in a flowery sense. So how many people in this room believe that even though the stars are thousands and thousands of miles away, they can affect our life here and now? By show of hands, be honest. So just 2 people, 3 people. I find that interesting because it's of my belief that even though the stars are so far away, they can completely affect our life here and now. And when you start to think in terms of that being real, it breeds credence and credibility upon star signs and horoscopes. And for me, one of the most fascinating things about star signs and horoscopes is that if you can take into account the way that somebody acts, it'll lead to the way that somebody thinks. And based off the back of both of those pieces of information as an aggregate, you should be able to work out their sign.
You know, we could stay around that, but in the Q&A, definitely, if you want to answer some some cold reading questions, I know that you're big on that and obviously very good at it. So
I just go with what I feel, you know, and I think that's the biggest secret, is just to, when you cold reading somebody, learn a few things that you feel work a lot of the time, like the moving line.
Sure.
Never use the same line twice. To go back to what Mark was saying earlier, is right, with the pin code stuff that you've learnt tonight, never use it all in succession. You know, you don't need to use it all in succession.
And one hit is very strong. Like, I mean, if you nail that hit and you're new to cold reading and you say, are you thinking about moving soon? And they say, yes, stop. You know, you can stop there. You can be bold, you can go on. But if you keep that, that's very, very powerful.
It is as a hit. But what I'd underline that with the feeling of subconscious uncomfortability. So what I'd say is it almost feels like where you're at right now in life is in this unsure place where you're ultimately looking for
right, so you take that
comfort.
hit and just like...
Yeah, and then you paint why they're moving.
Right.
So if I get a hit on something in a cold read, let's say we're going to just do
you wouldn't jump to a relationship thing if you got the hit.
Yeah.
Go from there.
So let's say that I were working with Mike here, and I said, Mike, what it feels like ultimately at this moment in time is I feel from you straight away is that even though you express this air of being confident, I feel that introvertly you like to spend or seek solace in your own solitude. So you're probably the sort of person that disappears for periods of a time just to reflect upon what it is that's going on in your life. I'd say as well, because of that, you find yourself becoming interested in things and then almost distasteful and disinterested, and you'll go through bouts where you're interested in things and then not, and you find you put a lot of time into one thing for a period of time. And it's the politics surrounding that one thing that just makes you ultimately feel sometimes this is not worth it, right? I'd also say as well, but because of that, you've probably had friends that you've lost because of those silly little things, right? And I'd say you have, there we are. I say we have two real friends and a lot of acquaintances outside of that, because you've ultimately learned that ultimately you could trust these 2 people, and outside of that, these are acquaintances. But because of past adversities and things that have happened to you in the past, you keep people at arm's reach now. So I'd say that you probably find it difficult to put trust in other people. I'd say as well that have you just started a new business venture? Yeah, because again, I'm feeling that you've started a new business venture. So you've ultimately just embarked on a new path. You're about to go down a new road, and I don't know why this is relevant, but. And I'll come back to this, John, and that's a very important thing, and I want to come back to that in a moment. But for now, I ultimately feel as well that you are finally, and I hope you don't mind me saying this, because of this new path that you're taking, you feel more confident than you've ever felt before. It's like you're learning to control your own thoughts and feelings, and you're learning to show people what you want to show them. So ultimately, the real you, people never get to see. You're almost an enigma, because they get to see the surface, the tip of the iceberg, but they don't get to see what's below it.
Yep.
I'd say, are you in a relationship right now? No, because I'm ultimately feeling as well that that's something that's on your mind, and that's something that you're looking into. At this moment in time, I feel that there's. Have you just been on a date recently? Because yes. Because I'm feeling as well with this. I'm feeling with this as well, because that's on the back of your mind, and all I can say to you in that respect is that I know you find it difficult to use your feelings instead of your thoughts, But in this particular situation, no matter what happens, don't do what you always do and try to see the problems that have happened in the past occurring before they occur. Just let go, because I think that ultimately that control per se, but just let go of everything and just let it run its course, because you almost worry that it's not going to go the way you want it to go. And ultimately, I bet you found yourself killing off potential situations in the past just because of that, to safeguard yourself. Yeah. And in this situation, don't do that, right? So yeah, so we'll call that at that, for that's just a couple of minutes. But ultimately,
that wasn't bad.
You're watching, you can see that, you know, and be 100% honest, hand on heart, Mike. Have I talked to you about any of that before? Have I asked you about any of that? I've not. You didn't even know that I'd be reading you. Anybody else could have nominated their self. How accurate was that?
That was accurate.
Right? And all I'm doing is ultimately for the this is cold reading. This is, and there's maybe one line, two lines that I'd use frequently is the trust lines. You find it difficult to trust, and you've probably got two friends and a lot of acquaintances outside of that. But that's because I felt it relevant to put it in this situation. Sure. So stock lines are not something you use at every chance you can get. The only reason I used it twice in the videos is just to show you how accurate stock lines can be. Stock lines are like shoes, right? They're like shoes. They're in a shoe store. Let's say that somebody that wants a pair of hiking boots goes into a shoe store, and they walk up to the salesman, and the salesman goes, "I've got you. Come and look at these shoes that are on sale over here." And they take them to like a pair of sandals that are open top. And they're like, "Yeah, but I want..." No, just look at these sandals over here. I want to show you the features on these. They have a beautiful leather strap. And they're never feeling what it is that the person really wants. And therefore, even though all these stock lines are shelved and there's a myriad of them that are fairly ambiguous, and these might be the best designed sandals in the world that are ultimately appealing to everybody, it doesn't mean that they're going to fit everybody. These might be a size 7 and you might be a size 9. You're in there for hiking boots and not sandals. So you've got to use stock lines like that. They should be bridges that connect hits. That's all they should be. And reading's not about hitting, but in the context of mentalism it is, because you want to make it feel like you're inside the head. Readers, real readers, and I'm not a real reader. I'm unequivocally not a real reader. So if there's real readers watching this, I'm not. I don't give readings. I don't give tarot readings. The closest I come to giving readings is my getting to know you routine, and this sort of stuff in between star signs and pin codes.
Obviously, you've put thousands of hours into this. It's really a treat, I think, for everybody here to see him do this live, unprepared. To see how well this works and how amazingly this hits. Are you able to give maybe a reference or two for people who want to get into a cold reading?
Yeah, well, so I'll quickly finish why this works,
sure,
and then give the references if you wanted to go look at this. So imagine the shoes. The salesman should have looked at the person's feet and first tried to estimate roughly what size they are. And when they come through the door, he walks in. He says, "Oh, by looking at you size 9, 10." The guy says yes. Ultimately, he feels comfortable with the salesman because the guy's just probed a little bit, as to what he is. And then he says, "Oh, let's imagine saying, so instead of saying what is it you're looking for, if you want to ultimately make that say, they're in there for the shoes anyway. Remember that. That's the same with reading. A lot of the times they're there for the reading, but." Let's say that the salesman then says, "Oh, before we tell you what kind of shoes would best fit you, what sort of lifestyle do you lead?" And the person says, "Oh, I'm constantly, energetic. I'm constantly walking. I prefer the outdoors to the indoors." He doesn't take a leap of the imagination for the person to turn around and say, "So we're looking for a pair of 8s or 9s for an active person that would need a soft sole because you're constantly walking, a nice pair of hiking shoes or boots that you could use outside. Do you have a particular style that you'd like?" Now, that's the same essentially as a reader. A good shoe salesman or a good salesman of any kind is the same as a good reader, receptive to what the person wants.
So if there's a shoe salesman out there watching this, take some
You'll
notes.
be perfect to this.
You'll be really good.
So just be receptive and just really, just ultimately let go. And this is what's important when you're reading somebody. Go with what you feel. So don't be scared of asking a question. Are you in a relationship right now? When I get a no, I get this is the reason why I ask. You've been on a date recently, yes? And you get that, yeah, I have. How did you know that?
I noticed that when you asked that right away. It felt so organic. You're not in a relationship, are you? And then it was like, no. It's like, yeah, but you know, and then you moved on, you went into the dating thing. It just seemed super organic, like you already knew the answer to his question.
I say it's conversational. If you
Right.
make it the old,
Yeah.
I'm going to read your mind.
Right.
You know, if you go back down that route, this is never going to seem real because it seems everything you've got to do has got to hit. But what I want to make it appear like is, this is something I live every day. You know, what I want you to feel at the end of a conversation with me is this. What you've seen is ultimately incredible because I just lead a normal lifestyle, but let me tell you, this is a burden as well. When it comes to Christmas time, I know what presents people have bought me before I open them. When I go on a date, at first date, I know what the girl's thinking before we get to the end of the date, you know? When my friends are lying to me, I ultimately get a feel for the fact that they're lying to me because they're telling me what I just want to hear. And it's a burden as well as it is something that's a positive. There's drama that's in this, you know? I'm not saying this is psychic, I'm not saying it's mediumistic. All this is just intuitive abilities that we all have, and you could do what I'm doing with a little bit of practice. How truthful is that? You could do what I'm doing with a little bit of practice.
Yep.
You know, and a lot of the time I am genuinely trying to read somebody. I'm reading why somebody's picking somebody. I am reading why somebody's, you know, doing this, right? So this is the most important thing. The most important thing. And I wanted to do that. I put this in there on purpose. And everyone's going to marvel at how simple this is. Do you believe it's possible to paint the way that the person remembers the performance? So to create a vision of something that happened even if it didn't. So let's say that I said to you, cut the deck of cards, and I can make you remember you shuffled the deck of cards. You can. Ultimately, you can control how they remember things. And a lot of people will be sat there saying that's not possible. But I'll tell you one thing that everybody in this room's forgotten. When did I go back to John? Right? I mentioned John. I never went back to John because it wasn't a hit. I left it at the door and just kept moving. And not one person's remembered it because it seems so irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. Right? And that's it. I shaped the way that you'd have remembered this experience. You'd have left that and gone, wow, you know, that this, and this. And you'd have never have even talked about John. You'd have left it out because I didn't bring any attention to it. I paid it no heed. I said, we might come back to that later because I feel it's going to be important. And just keep moving. So cold reading references, I honestly think that systems are good. Like, you know, you'll probably get a lot off Google if you look at them. The best reference that I can give you, and a lot of people at home will disagree with watching stuff like this, but I feel you're really cutting your own creativity if you don't, is George Anderson. Not the mentalist, the medium. Not that George Anderson, the mentalist, is bad. He's not, he's great. But for readings, George Anderson, the medium.
Yeah, you talked to me about him.
I did. Even in my spare time, I talk about how great this guy is. I've said to you on the way back, and you were deflecting loads of points, and I still said to you, no, this guy is good.
To hear someone like, you know, of your stature and your talent talk highly about a medium. Okay, this isn't a mentalist. This is what usually mentalists seek to debunk. Go on.
This guy doesn't claim to be a medium. He doesn't claim to be a psychic. He ultimately translates messages. He's religious, and not that any of that matters because I leave all that at the door when I'm watching him work. And he's so naturally gifted, he doesn't even know the techniques he's using. One of the techniques that I applied on you, which is so beautiful, is readers will say, does that make sense to you? You'll see as soon as a psychic or a medium says, does that make sense to you? Does that make sense to you? I always feel that you're asking too many questions. Does that make sense to you? You're a medium. You should know if it makes sense. You know, like what George Anderson does is something very clever. He does the exact opposite. He stops the person talking. So remember right at the start where I went, but what's important is, that were inspired by George Anderson. What George Anderson will do at the start of a reading is say, I want you to just give me yes or no, and nothing else, and only when I ask. So don't say anything because you'll give me clues. And he'll start to read the person. And when he notices the person starts to smile or starts to cry a little bit,
and he'll ask.
He'll say, he goes, and you understand what I mean by this? And they go, yes. So all the audience ever hear is yes, 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 and he even reframes the way that he asks questions. So if I said, Mike, do you mind if I share this piece of information? Mike would go, no. I don't want him hearing a no. So George Anderson reframes that and he says, Mike, are you happy for me to share this with everybody? Yes. So even the questions he's asking always have a yes at the end, so that the way that the audience remember this is just yes, 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 yes. And what's beautiful about it now is that everybody else hearing yeses, and you do what the natural thing is that most people do when they get a reading. They forget the misses and only remember the hits. So when you leave and talk about it later on with everybody else, all you can ever talk about is how perfect the reading was.
Because I think a lot of people who do cold reading rely on the fact that people don't remember the misses. They always remember the hits. Is that necessarily true in every case? I don't think so. I think some people, who are more analytical, sometimes will remember the misses. However, in this case, it's a great way of engineering it in a way that there are no misses. Yeah, it's fantastic.
It depends in what context the reading is being given.
Sure.
I think if
you're shotgunning through something, it's okay to get a miss here and
yeah,
there.
you're going to get misses, because you're just bowling out information that they might not necessarily remember. But they always say, I want you to have a think about that because it's important. And this is the thing, if I said to you, and I'm not endorsing mediums, I'm not endorsing psychics, I hold no opinion either way. I used to be of the opinion of I want to shoot this down, I want to stop it, I want to do whatever. But I've grown up and I see it as a case of live and let live. And if people feel that that's what they're doing, I'm too engrossed in what I'm doing to care about what they're doing, and the only time I'll watch is if they have a technique that interests me. That's it, right? I leave my prejudice at the door to expand my own knowledge. And that's one thing that I think we all miss. We cut off stuff that we don't feel is relevant because to us, we're never going to use that. But how many routines have you ever said that you never used 5 years ago that you're finding that you use now? So the making them forget, mediums don't really do that. They don't try to force them to forget. Let's say that I said, I'm picking up on the name Pat from Beyond the Grave. This is your great aunt, and let's say it won. And I'm doing this very theatrically. Does John make sense to you? No, because Pat's telling me it's very important that you think back to why this is important. We'll come back to that later on. They don't say, think about why this is important. They say, your great aunt Pat's saying that this is very important, and she wants you to think about why this is relevant. Well, you're obviously going to do it for your great aunt Pat, So it's a bad thing, but at the same time, it's very clever in the sense that because there's an emotional tie,
they feel that they want to agree. And
they feel that they want to acknowledge it and look for it. And later on, by you, when people ask in saying, I still don't know what John is, by you saying that, it's almost like you've not adhered to her wishes, the last wishes that she's ever said when she's communicated. So you'll find anything you say, I think I know what the John thing is, but I want to investigate it a little bit more. Yeah. They're very clever, and essentially, it's instead of getting rid of mechanical slights, mechanical moves, you learn to verbally adjust, because verbals are something that nobody can see. So just to quickly wrap up over the entire of the things that we've talked about, because we've talked about a hell of a lot.
Yeah, we've been going on for, just over 3 hours.
Have we? Yeah. Wow. See, I ramble. So let's wrap up over the stuff we've talked about, just to quickly make a point, because I don't want you feeling that the star sign anagram is the only thing that you can do with an anagram in this context. You can literally do whatever you want. If you want to change it to, Atlas Brookings has got an incredible superhero anagram. If star signs are not your thing, you can go onto Google and find an anagram generator for brands, cars, whatever you want. It doesn't matter. You can ultimately do whatever you want at this phase of the routine. You don't have to do the force over here. If you wanted to change this and you felt uncomfortable with this, you could use the toxic force and have it passed around the table and do it that way and just end up with a total of a toxic force and reveal that as the pin if you really wanted to. What I'm saying to you is I wanted to give you bits of and little bits of things that you could take away, and you don't necessarily have to do it the way that I do it, because this is not about me, this is about you guys. Sure. This is about you not worrying about what it is that I'm doing, worrying about what it is that you do, and finding the things that you think, wow, there's a nice, even if it's just one little principle that you could take away and go, I can fit that into what it is that I'm doing, I can change what it is that I'm doing. So right back at the start we talked about the sprinklings. The sprinklings are important. Don't just reveal this as 1, 2, 3, 4. Talk about why they set the code that they set. That's important. This is just a quick overview. Why they set their code they set. What sort of lifestyle do they lead? Is this a memorable number? Is this a number that's just convenient? Can I pick up on this piece of information if they're thinking of it in a different language? Yes, I can, because I already know what the piece of information is. Can I pick up on this if they lie about it? Well, yes, I can. Can I get them to think about a lie or a truth and tell them whether they're thinking of a lie or a truth without saying it out loud? Yes, I can. Can I ultimately come back to the end of this, hover my hand over the top and reveal it, even if they've done this the same way that I've done it? Yes, I can. After this point, and after we've talked about the sprinklings and just making it seem like I'm picking up on why they set the code, I'm inside the head, I ultimately know why they've done what they've done now. How do I actively wrap this up? I've done that, boom, that's finished. So now we've moved into the more skeptical question. The skeptical natured people then turn around and say, can you do this if I'm not touching the phone? Well, yes, I can. But you know what? Let me just make this more difficult. You create a code, make it whatever you want. I'll never touch your phone surrounding events from your life. And to make this even more interesting, do you know what? You think of any piece of information, and this is how it appears from the audience's perspective. Boom, 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 boom. I reveal both of them just for the fun of it.
Sure.
Right? You know, can I take this? Can I have you if I'm in a situation where I don't want to reveal somebody's PIN because they've said that they're not happy with me revealing it. So where do we go? Instead of having them set a new PIN because they're not comfortable doing that, well, we move into calendar. Type in your favourite number. Now make a PIN code up and I'll reveal that. Boom, we move into that. So look, let's have a look at your outs there, you know. You've revealed it. You've got your skeptics that don't want to give you the phone. You've got the people where you still want to perform this, but they don't want to change the code. Ultimately now you can change the code. As Mark said, do you think that this loses its power if you do it twice? I ultimately do. You've been given 3 or 4 different methods there to go out and do this. So how do we still make this seem fresh while still doing the same thing? Sure. I get you to guess my PIN code.
Yeah.
Right? So instead, I flip it on its head and I let you feel the power for a few seconds. Do you know what? If I don't want to do the star sign thing with me guessing theirs, why don't I say to them, in a moment you're going to get to think of a piece of information surrounding my life. You're going to take this and write it down. Instead of me guessing their star sign, I write down, can you think of my star sign and write down what you think it is? And just before I write it, I say, in fact, instead of writing this down, because I don't want people thinking I peeked it and just agreed with you maybe, why don't you just imagine it written in the air and I'll ask you questions and you can give me a yes or a no. Do you think there's an R in my sign? And flip it on its head and do it backwards. And now there's a reason for asking. And you're now guessing mine. And I just do the same anagram on whatever star sign you believe I am, I write down and turn it round. You know, so I'm trying to show you that from this what seems like, you know, little things that are all haphazard because they're all in the same blanket, or they're really not. Because then the cold reading we come to at the end, I can slot that. Let's say that I'm coming to yours, and now I read George the same way that I read Mike, and I say, just so we're on the same page, he's thinking of his astrological sign, you're an Aries, and just to finish this off, the most skeptical person in this room, the PIN code that you created and never let me touch is 40030, boom. And that's, hey, just imagine the reactions that you're going to get from the people around you. You're tying that in with a little sprinklings, you know, of just whatever you want, and the sprinklings don't just have to be when you're looking at a number. Imagine having them write something down and saying to them, now think of a liar, and then you point out, so don't say anything out loud here, but I think that what you're lying about is this, 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 and this. But be honest, what's important is the name you're thinking of is this. You can use these sprinklings in different contexts. It doesn't have to be for the PIN code. You know, a beautiful one is this. You force a playing card. Let's say I forced, well, let's say that we take this. Can you cut this deck for me? Any way you like. And we'll just quickly wrap up on this, right? You've done that. You're happy that this is fairly random, right? In fact, you riffle them for me. Give them a riffle as well. So we have a cut deck of cards, and we have them riffled like that. Just peek at the top card and show everybody else but me. You done that?
Yep.
Mix it into the middle for me. Shuffle them up. Yeah, mix them up. I don't want to touch them. So let's look what happened. You cut a deck of cards that were handed across to be shuffled. That's known as a poker standard deck. There's no short cards in there. You can tell there's no breaks or anything like that. You peeked at a card, you mixed it up. There's no way I can know what that card is. That makes sense, right? Yeah. So I'll work with you for this. In your mind, can you tell me a lie? So we're going back to the sprinklings now, but watch how beautiful it works in this sense, right? Just how I told you to take the sprinklings and do the lie thing earlier with this. So you're thinking of a playing card, right? So in your mind, lie to me about what that card is. So ultimately, straight away, I'm feeling that he's lying about the fact that he had a red card. So that tells me the card that he picked was probably black. I'd say as well now that even though you know that I've just called you on the fact that it isn't a red card, you've just changed from a diamond to a heart, just to be pedantic. You've done that, right? Yeah, look, and I'm calling the lie here. This is genuinely me calling the lie. I'd say geometrically, the heart for me is closest to the spade, and I don't think the lie had been that much of a jump. This is a spade, right? So in your mind, jump back to another number like the number 9 and tell when you've got it. Okay. So I don't feel you've moved too far away. This is interesting. Just 3 or 4 here. Yeah. So the lie I think he's telling is a 2 or a 3 of hearts. But what's important is the truth is the 6 of spades, right? Yes, there we go,
That's
right?
fantastic.
And then you reveal the card, right? So what I'm saying to you is these sprinklings don't just have to be used in what I'm showing you in. I want to show you the real versatility and range of all these little details and subtleties and how you can apply them to the things that you're already doing. So I know that there's a peak in there before I hand you the deck, and I just hope you're going to retain top stock.
Yeah.
So he cuts, I take the deck back, I peek the top card, hand it across, you riffle shuffle the deck. I hope you're retaining top stock. I watch just in case you're not. If you're not, I say in a casino they'd burn the top and bottom cards, so put them in the middle, then bring it back to top stock, and boom, there it is. But the subtlety is that there's no way I can know this because the deck were cut, right? But if you'd have picked a red card and I tell you to lie, why would you think of another red card?
Sure.
It'd be a black card.
Yeah, it'd be opposite.
So you go with the exact opposite. The next bit's just a bit of
That's
byplay.
great. That's great.
Just as I told you earlier with the number 7, jump back to another number like the number 9 really largely.
So
I'm restricting them.
I mean, the fact that you picked up on the lie, and the fact that you called out what the lie was, and even if, like you said earlier, even if you would have said the 5 of hearts and he was really thinking of like 3 of hearts, you would have said, but that doesn't matter. What's important.
And what gives me that tell
about.
is when I say I feel you stayed relatively close, just 3 or 4.
Yeah.
And he's going, yeah. He's
Yes,
told me
yes,
now.
Yes, yep.
Yeah.
He's told me, so I know it's 2 or a 3 of hearts that you were thinking of as the lie.
And at this point, whether you say a 2 or 3, he's going to agree with you because it's close enough to the lie, right?
Yeah. And so I say 2 or 3 of hearts, but what's
That
important
answers
is
that answers
boom.
actually another question that we had based on playing cards with mentalism. How do you incorporate it? And I think you just answered that. You can use the techniques that you
Any of
developed
these
through
techniques.
cold reading, through the tricks that the effects that you've taught today. Any of that, mix it up the way you want in whatever you're comfortable with, either forcing, peaking, any of this stuff, right?
All this stuff earlier on with this. So let's say that one that I mentioned earlier. Let's say that I took this out, and again, I'll just show you how this should look. And this is just using. Okay, so if I asked you to think of a number from 1 to 10, not like 3, right? Have you got one? So this is using the same thing as this.
Yeah.
You should have jumped to a 7 there in your mind, right? Did you do that?
Yeah, first one was a 7.
So instinctively you jumped to it. First thing that jumped in your head was 7. So now you do I just want you to take red or black from me. Which one are you taking?
Red.
Free choice?
Yes.
Yeah? Heart or diamond? You can change your mind as many times as you want. It doesn't matter to me.
Diamond.
And at this point, you don't have to change. Bear in mind, nobody does, right? Nobody changes.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you that in advance. You don't have to change. Do you want to at the last minute just for the fun of it?
Yes.
To hearts?
Yes.
It's a good job you went for the 7 of hearts because that's what I went for, right? So ultimately I needed him to change. I did the Chan Canasta thing of smiling, saying you don't have to change, which makes him feel like I've hit the diamond. Then I say, so do you want to be fun and change one more time? Well, he's going to not turn around and go, no, I don't want to be fun.
Right. He doesn't want to be Debbie Downer.
It presses him to change,
Yeah.
but it's all
That's great, man.
verbals. It's all verbals, you know. It's all little verbals. So that's taking the 7 thing and applying it to playing cards, you know.
That's great.
So just take everything you've seen in this lecture, break it down because there's a lot to digest. On the first view of this, you'll probably view it as a load of haphazard effects that are all pin related.
I think you're being a little modest. How do you guys find the lecture was? You guys, did you? I mean, great, right? Let's give him a hand.
Oh, man.
You know, I think as Pete said, you know, no matter you read a book or you watch a multi-trick DVD or you watch a lecture like this, I think if you can retain one thing. I think I've retained at least 3 or 4 really valuable things that I could apply to my performances. And I know I know you're a fan of Darren Brown as well, and Darren's a big advocate as well in his books to say, I hope you don't take any of this literally. I hope you don't use any of this the way I described it, and just take it and run with it and make it your own, because that's really what it's about, is making it your own. So thank you.
Thank you, man.
Thank you, Peter. It was
And,
honor and pleasure.
Thank you for hosting.
I think we're okay. That about wraps up the lecture thing and everything encompassing tricks and effects. And I think we're going to get into a little bit of a Q&A. So is that cool?
Is that good?
Yes.
Yeah,
All right.
man.
Welcome back, guys. As you can clearly see, we've gotten into a more of a relaxed atmosphere. Broken out some nice cigars. Now it's time for the Q&A section. We will start. Do we have anybody waiting on Skype right now? No? Let's start by taking some questions from you guys. Does anybody have a question they'd like to ask Peter, myself, or anything else?
Peter.
Yep. What's your name?
Here.
Bill?
Hey, Bill.
Bill.
a pleasure to meet you. Thank
Pleasure
you
to
for
meet
coming
you too.
down.
When I hear you talk, I hear a lot of psychology. Did you attend any of that school, or did that just come naturally? Because the way you're attacking it, it's like, that's how I attack when I was talking earlier about cards. I use the psych against you, and I figure out what works with you and find my triggers to make you fold or call me. And that's what you're doing. You're forcing them. I'm forcing them to call or fold. You're forcing them to say the words you want. But basically, we're doing the same thing.
Yeah, there's a really funny story about this that I never tell, so I'm not going to go into the full depths of it. But
This is a funny story.
Later on when we finish off of here, I'll tell you the story. I used to, when I first started doing this professionally, I used to tour around universities, and I used to give like pseudo demonstrations on psychology. I first got booked by Bradford University, and they were doing these like private come dine with me events at home, and I was massively interested in psychology for a long time, social psychology. I have a vested interest in a lot of things, whether it's medicine, whether it's law. I look into it all, but I look into it for me. I don't look into it for the grades. I don't look into it for the piece of paper at the end. I'm not looking at it as a career. I look at it out of fun. And I think that psychology is interesting. The most interesting thing about psychology is the difference in opinion. So you could take two amazing psychologists and you can read their works, and they're complete opposites. And I think it's like two different paintings, from two different artists talking about, even if two artists were asked to paint two women, the pictures would be completely different. So I studied a lot, and then after getting invited, they said, "Can you come and give us a talk about the psychology behind what it is that you do?" Because this woman, they were a psychology teacher, and she really bought into this. I used to do a come dine with me night every few weeks.
There's probably a Skype call coming in.
So I used to give the talks at like universities I give a talk at her university every year. So it started like that, like I'd go 2 or 3 times during the year. The second year, right, what had happened was somebody else had come from a different place and said, "Could you come and give the same talk at my university?" So I said yes, so I was going to give a talk at that university. And then I started actively giving talks, like a show talk thing where this is how entertaining psychology can be. And that's where I'm going to leave the story, but remind me after to pick up on the rest of the story, because there's something that you'll find completely unbelievable that you'd have to see to believe it. And I've showed you it. And you'd have to see it to believe it, but it's just one more story that I think adds. When I write a book, right at the end of everything, just about, not even about the mentalism stuff, because that stuff's not even the most interesting stuff. Like one story from here is this brown recluse spider bit me. So instead of going to a hospital like everybody told me to, I operated on myself, so literally operated on myself and fixed it myself. And it's feeling better, it's gone down, I've drained it.
Do you want to go through the details of the operation?
No, I don't. Not the people watching, so.
We'll save that for the for next time. Mr. Calabrese. This is Mark Calabrese, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm wearing a brown hat too. I don't have any cigars. So
You're not old enough to smoke cigars.
yeah, the feel won't be the same.
So what's up? What's up, Mark?
I have 2 questions actually. Question number 1 would be, what is your opinions, and it's probably a huge discussion, debate you could have with somebody about this. What is your opinions on using playing cards and mentalism? I know that's like a topic that a lot of mentalists have. And then the second question, and I figured maybe you'll answer one or both, whichever one you think is more important. The second question is, do you have any opinions on giving disclaimers in the beginning of your show? Like Luke Jermaine will be the kind of guy.
That's a really good question.
He'll say one thing. Darren Brown will say, this is no stooging. I use da 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 da.
Pen
Some
as
people
well
say
is a big.
nothing. Some people say I use 5 sentences to give the illusion of the 6th. What's your opinion on?
That's a really good question.
And what's your opinion on playing cards and mentalism?
So, thank you for the question. It's one that ultimately everybody argues about over and over and over again. And it's just the same, I think, same answer as the psychic question for me, the medium question. At first, so I go through phases where, and I'm honest about it, like one minute I'll find that playing cards are really interesting, another minute I'll think that I'm not ever going to use them again, and then I'll find myself just jamming. I didn't know that the mics were still on, I'm jamming away here at the table. I normally use them only in the context of guessing a card with one card on the table, or I use them to give a reading. So the only time I ever use them is because they were used in cartomancy to give readings in the past. And and there's an interesting concept that I came up with that most of the time when we read, what we do is the way that they do it is they take a card and they'd flip it over, and they'd read the card to know about the person. But what I thought were interesting is, wouldn't it be more interesting if I could read the person to get to the card? So I'd frame the cards in a specific way, and I'd use a marked deck. And then I'd say, you know, if you're clubs, you're outgoing. If you're a heart, you're empathetic. And I'd frame the suits and I'd frame the numbers somewhat different. So when they chose the card out of the deck, by looking at the marking on the back, they practically told me about themselves without knowing that they told me.
Right.
Which were really beautiful, because now all I do is read the person based off the details they've given me and say there's only really one card that could represent you in the deck, and they flip it over and it's the one card that separated themselves from everybody else. So to answer your question, I don't have a particular preference. I think that if you're a mind reader and you sit down and there's somebody that says, do you play poker? Do you use your skills for poker? I think you're missing a trick, mind the pun. I think you're missing a trick if you turn around and say, no, I don't touch playing cards.
Yeah, Hector Chadwick touched on that as well in Mental Mysteries. And he said if you could read minds, one of the first things you might do is go to a casino and make some money, right, with playing cards. So it's a great justification for why you would use playing cards in a mentalism or a psychic reading.
You know, so yeah, so you just whatever makes you comfortable, and don't listen to anybody else's opinions, because my opinions are not necessarily going to be what gels with your opinions. I'm not right. At the same time, I'm not wrong. I just think, like I say, you get given a canvas, and every single tool that you get given is a paintbrush, and you can choose whether you want to use one brush consecutively, or you can use the other tools. And so my opinion is that there's no real answer to that. But I think to use them credibly, and that's the key word here, is you've got to touch the deck as little as possible and frame the metaphorical relevance. So you've got to paint a premise. You know, if you start touching the deck and stuff, people will say, cool trick. If I give somebody the deck, they shuffle them, then they get cut, and then they're shuffled again, and then they take the card, they put it in the middle, they shuffle them back up. That's fair. You've never touched the deck, and then you move on and you start revealing the card. That looks fair. And the second question about the disclaimers, I used to do a lot more shows than I'm doing now, and I'm very honest about that. I don't make my profession from doing shows anymore. I make my profession from writing other people's shows and writing. What I've showed you today is nothing like what you'd consult when it comes to television. Nothing like it at all. You wouldn't go through a process like this. You wouldn't do anything. You might do the PIN code swipe thing off camera, then come on camera and ask them to put the phone in the pocket, and then start from there in the routine, so that all the audience sees a really clean bit of you saying, do you have a mobile phone? Are you happy for me to guess the code, and punching it in and it opens up. On video, you know, so that'd be essentially like using that for a pre-show. But I don't have disclaimers. I've never used disclaimers. I've stopped even, if I'm ever doing gigs now, it's only for somebody that I know. Like when I get back to England, I was booked for a company to go. Every time they open a new bar, I have the contract to open the bar. So that's been something that I've had for the last 5 years, and I've opened, and these guys will do 6 months a year at a bar, then they'll move, but they might want to book me back in between, and it's in my contract they can have me for up to 3 performances in the year, as long as the dates are open in my diary. So as soon as I land on the 22nd in England. On the 23rd, which I think is the Sunday, I go and I perform at this new bar that they've just opened in Wyke, which is probably about 20-30 minutes from me, and I've not even told them what it is that I do. They do the advertising for me, and they just put whatever they like.
Whatever draws people in.
They just put, you know, they come and have your mind read. Could you think of a question that you don't think anybody could guess? We've got a guy here that can guess it. They could put me as a fortune teller if they wanted. You know, as long as they put I want a psychic or a medium, or that I'm not going to be, you know, if I am going to be telling someone's fortune, it's just for fun. Yeah. Like, that's the only time if they painted me as a fortune teller would I ever say, put that as a disclaimer. But no, I don't have one. I just put mentalist or mind reader, and that's really it.
I have one more question.
Yeah.
And then you can get rid of me. This might be more of a personal question, and I think it'll apply to both you and Chris, and maybe a little bit myself. But tattoos, right? You are obviously you have a few, 1 or 2, and Chris has 1
It's
or
just
2.
one at this point. I think they're all
Yeah,
touching, so
a lot,
it's
exactly, right?
it's just become
But,
one tattoo.
What I'm making is that depending on the venues, obviously, well, I think it might be different in the States than it would be in the UK. But like someone as yourself around here in, let's say, New York, New Jersey area, which is where I live, do you feel that you lose or gain shows or work based off of your appearance? And does it matter?
I don't think it's relevant anymore because you know I think this is the best answer to that question in a different context. And I'm a massive fan of Luke Jumeirah, a real big fan. I'm open and honest. I think the guy's an incredible performer, incredibly sick, incredibly smart. And he asked a question at a lecture that I were performing at the lecture with him. I was lecturing as well. And he said, "How many people in this room are fans of Cliff Richard?" And none of us put his hand up. And he laughed and he said it hadn't stopped him having a #1 record, right? So the thing that I felt were interesting about that is there's going to be hip venues that are opening all the time, and venues that are closed-minded, 1 or 2 venues, 3 venues nowadays that are closed-minded, they don't deserve to have me come and share my gift.
That's what I was just about to actually say. Not because I wanted to be more about you than me, but I actually recently lost a gig because they saw a picture on my Instagram with me with tattoos, and I don't have, you know, as you can see, like you can barely see, you know, I wear a short sleeve shirt. I don't have really anything compared to you, for example. And they saw a picture of something they had, and they just in my head I was like, I don't even want to do you guys. Like,
That's right.
You guys don't.
I think that it's a bonus because you see this mysterious guy sit down with tattoos.
Yeah.
You see, tattoos tell a story.
Of course, yeah.
And it's almost like, without having to say it, this guy's lived some kind of a life.
Right.
And I don't know what it is. But if you want to go out and get more tattoos, Mark, and if you want to go out and you want to cover yourself in tattoos, this is one rule that I think this is why me and Chris get on so well, is life's about living. And there's far too many people I know that have had their lives cut far too short. And for the little period of time that they were here, they were always saying, I'm going to get a better job soon, I'm going to do this soon, I'm going to do that soon. And the corporate market's now opening up to the fact that tattoos exist. Yep. You walk around, you look at eyeglasses advertisements or glasses, and they're using tattooed models. You look at Primark, they're using, you know, pennies or stores, they're using people with tattoos on their necks. It's the cool thing at the minute, and companies want to book that. But more so than that, if a company don't want to book you for that particular reason, yeah, okay, whatever. Do you know what? I'd rather not take your $1,000 or $500, however much you're paying me. I'd rather sit at home and enjoy that time with company that's going to make me feel cool. Yeah. Sit and smoke a cigar amongst friends and have a glass of whiskey. I'm not an alcoholic, you know. I purposely drank water throughout when I was performing and lecturing. This is a little gift from Murphy's to me, is a glass of whiskey and a cigar. You know, I always say I don't care what anybody else's opinion is of me. You know, there's some kid online recently posted something about what it is that I've done. I couldn't care less about his comment, and the reason I couldn't care less, he said something about my material being impractical, and I thought, great. But the difference between me and you is that you consider my material practical. You can ask me to perform anything of mine that you've seen, and I'll perform it. Sure. But not only that, it's taken me around the world. I've met incredible friends, and I'm living life based off the back of something that you see as being impractical. How is that impractical? So I make things that would be considered, something that would be considered like tattoos, for example, as unsavoury, and I use them to my advantage. I put positives plus. If there's any venue that doesn't want me, it's not that they don't want me. It's just they're not good enough to have me at that particular point. And when they call me back later, on, and they've got to the fact that people are hip and that they have tattoos, whatever.
Yeah.
Well, I just say, sorry, I'm not.
10 years ago, if you had a tattoo, you were an outcast. Nowadays, it's rare for you to not have a tattoo.
Sure.
But there still is that stigma, and my reason for asking was because you're probably one of the most tattooed that I know. Besides, like Chris has obviously had, I have a good amount. Chris has way more than I do, and you obviously have more. And I just like to hear from people who are kind of in the same boat, maybe even more so, because once again, I've never been really criticized by spectators, but I've also at the same time thought about, okay, I wonder how I'd be viewed differently because of them.
I think it's also a generation transition.
Yeah, we're moving.
I think,
man.
you know, there's a lot of businesses that are flourishing, that are new, that are opening, like you said, like all these bars opening stuff, where the owners are quite young, quite hip, and, you know, they know the trend. But there's a lot of businesses that have been around for 70 years and still have, you know, 80-year-old owners and stuff, and they're a little bit more traditional. Yeah, they might have money, but you know what? So do young, growing businesses. They got money too, and money's good everywhere, man.
I'll tell you this, Mark, and this is a fact, and you can look into this, that 90%, 95% of TV executives and producers in Los Angeles are 20 to 25 years old, 30 maximum. You lose custom in a bar, you gain custom in a magazine. You lose custom...
And they'll take a guy with tattoos over a guy,
somebody
else.
Because it's different. So
Yeah,
the point I'm making is you lose custom in a bar, you gain it in a magazine. You lose custom here, somebody's talking about you there.
Right.
It's always going to, no matter what is going on, no matter how you look, you know, you don't even have to be super slick. In this industry, it's not about being etiquette, it's not about being super tightly scripted, it's not about feeling that you have to be the best performer, it's just about being you.
Yeah.
And every painting that you paint, you know, is your painting, it's your style, that's the way that you're going through life, and ultimately what you're doing is sharing a small part of the way you do things with the people around you. And if they appreciate that and they follow you for just who you are, then that's cool. If they don't want to follow you and they want to talk about how bad you are, how unintelligent you come across, or how they feel your material's impractical, that's cool. That's their opinion, and they're always going to have that opinion, and no matter what you do, it's not going to change.
You'll never win them over anyways.
You know, there's no point trying. You know, if they want to believe that an effect you've done stooged, it's stooged. If they want to believe what you've done's pre-show, it's pre-show. I'm 100% sure, Mike, that people are going to say that I somehow talked to you ahead of time, and I don't care. You know, like, you and everybody else in this room knows how real time that was. It could have been anybody. Chris, you've seen it for yourself.
Absolutely.
What I'm saying is, though, is for me, I don't care if they don't want to book me, and that's it. I'm not gonna worry about it. And if it comes down to the fact of money, like if it comes down to the fact of me being so desperate for money that no venue would ever take me because I had tattoos, I just get a different job doing something else. You know.
Last bit of advice. Do you think I should get? So then I shouldn't get this tattooed. Well, I shouldn't get this tattooed to my chest. Is what you're saying? I shouldn't get.
I think you should. I think you should. I think you should get a new phone case.
Okay. On that note, Peter Turner, very good stuff.
Thank you, Mark.
Hey,
thank you for joining us, man.
Thanks, Mark.
Cheers, dude.
I got a great question here, actually. I don't know how long we're running this time.
Yeah, man, we're just doing questions. We're good, man. Yeah, as long as you guys are happy. You guys happy? Just answering questions, chilling out. We're just.
If you guys at home are happy, keep tuning in. If not, you know, tune out. Get the DVD later. It's cool, but
yeah, man,
we're having fun. I got a great question here, which you can elaborate on, and I think you're probably one of the foremost experts that I know about this subject. And this comes from Ayman Hassoun, who says, any ideas and advice on pre-show or instant stooging in dual reality? So I think you can talk a lot about that. You got a project coming up.
Yes, I've got a project called the STEM System that's coming out, and there's a really cool piece of footage in there that I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about or not, right? And for the few people that have seen this, it would just, do you know when these people capture like Nessie or Bigfoot on camera and it's just so unbelievable, it's just like, what? And the epitome of being bold, this is probably the boldest thing that I've ever done. And if you want to tune in and you want to watch it...
I can attest to that.
You know, if you want to tune in and watch this, I walked into a casino in England, one of the biggest casinos in England, and I sat at a roulette table, and I had a dealer paying me out on numbers that had not rolled in. And I caught it on camera, right? I caught it on camera. And this is, you know, this is on this DVD. It doesn't tell you how to do it, but it's implicit of the fact of how I did it. The reason being is after we shot the DVD, the casino called the police, and David Penn got interviewed by the police, and you can see David talking about it on the DVD. It's cool as hell, right? So, but you have to watch it. You have to see it to believe it. It's ridiculous. Like it were either going to work or it wasn't, and I wasn't bothered about it not working because you'd have never seen it, right? And it's So this is the thing. I think a lot of people think that I'm an advocate for dual reality and that I'm an advocate for instant stooging and I'm an advocate for pre-show work. I'm not, and I'm not an advocate for anything. I just do with what works at the time. The only time that I ever use instant stooging, is. So this is going to sound really bad because I wrote a book called Dare to be Bold. And if you ever read back over Dare to be Bold, you'll see there's some ideas that have still live on now that died back then, right? And I'm going to be 100% honest. The way that I perform now is entirely different to the way that I performed back then. And back then I was so enthralled in Animan that I wanted to keep Animan's spirit alive by taking effects that he'd done and trying to renew them. And I genuinely performed. Every effect that you've read in the books I performed for people at gigs and whatever else. And the only time I'd ever use instant stooging, let's put ourselves into a scenario. We've built up a really beautiful effect. It's about to peak, and the last bit requires you to peak the piece of information. So let's say we've purposely left it late to peak it for whatever reason, right? And we peak it, and there's nothing written there, right? Or there's a squiggle that we can't understand, or it's just the impression's not taken. You've peaked this to a point. What do? So you're stood on stage in front of 500 people, let's say. I want you to put yourself in this situation professionally. You're being paid for this show. You're all being paid to do this show. You have two choices. One choice is you've peaked it, it's about to be the end of your show, and you say, sorry, this hasn't worked, and you storm off the stage. Or you be honest with the person on stage and you instant stooge them, and you say, look, this would usually work, I'm going to be honest, this is the finale to the show, it's not worked out, whatever. Think of this and let's wrap this up, and I promise you that next time this probably would work. And instant stooge them. What would you rather do?
Yeah.
Would you rather let the show drop?
I'd probably
ruin
cry.
it? If you're being paid, it's a paid performance in front of a lot of people, what would you rather do? And that's the question. Necessity, that's all. Necessity is the only time that I'd use it. That's not to say that there's not clever times when you can use instant stooging. That's what's important here, right? This is something I've never shared, and this were a happy accident. A lot of my stuff are born out the back of happy accidents. So I asked somebody to do the life equation, to type it in. I said, please don't forget this number, it's imperative. They erase it out of the phone. Can you remember this? Yes. Hand on heart, swear you can remember this. Yes. He gets to the end. So focus on the number. I've forgotten it. So I've just spent the best part of 5 minutes asking him to type numbers in, and he's forgotten it. So what do? I say, well, we can't do this then, let's move on to the next effect, which is what most people would do at that point. I'm not gonna, right? This is where I feel that instant stooging is gonna be really nice. So I bring him over, he sits down next to me, and I say to him, it's there, you just don't know how to recall this number, it's at the subconscious. Let me teach you how to bring it forward to the front of your mind. So now I whisper to him, and I say, look, I'm going to be 100% honest, if you don't know what this is, I don't know what it is, and we're both going to look very, very stupid. So this is what's going to happen. I'm going to ask you to just imagine the first digit, I'm going to call out a random digit, I'm going to ask you if it's right, just say yes, right? And then I'll reveal the rest. It's going to look like A, you remembered the number, B, I revealed the number, and it gets us both out of a situation that we don't want to be in, right? So he's nodding along, and we do this now. He's happy that I've not made a dick of him in front of everybody else. And that he's repaying me by not doing the same to me. I don't see how that's an issue. I don't see how, instead of ruining the moment that's built right up, I don't see how that's a problem. You know, so I think that's fairly justified if you ask me.
And I think it all depends on the venue you're performing for. If you're performing for 2 people and you instant stooge one of them, yeah, it becomes a little bit ridiculous. But if you're performing for 1,000 people and one of them has to have a slightly diminished effect, and a whole different effect, mind you. It's not the same effect at all for that
it's just feeling relieved that you've not made a show of him in front of 1,000 people. But even with two people, right? Even with 2 people, imagine it's a boyfriend and a girlfriend, and you've set it up so that the boyfriend's reading the girlfriend's mind, and it's a first date, and you whisper to him and you say, look, I'd normally reveal this, but I know that you're on a date here, and I want to make you look really super cool. So I'm going to tell you what information she's thinking of, and I'm going to give you the power to reveal this. That takes this away from being about me, and it makes them more interested in you because you have a connection.
And letting someone in on a secret like that, I mean, makes them feel so great. And if you find the right context to which to do it,
that is
not blatantly,
you know,
oh, you have to say this and you're going to be my stooge. Yeah, obviously people are going to be reluctant and he's going to feel that, yeah, he got cheated somehow. But this is a beautiful example that you gave.
Think of that. Is he going to turn to her and say, you know what, I was just pretending earlier when I pretended we had a connection?
Can you tell the story in the restaurant that between there was the man and the woman, and he didn't believe in mind reading?
Oh, this is really bad. So this is going back to heckler stuff.
This is
so
funny.
This is going back to heckler stuff. So during my show, performing in bars and stuff, and I'm glad you brought this up. It was Heckler Central, so I cut my teeth in venues where it wasn't this is a friendly-ish audience. You're magicians and mentalists, so you see what's going on for the most part. But what I'm saying is that these places, they were not. If they could have you, they'd have you. You walk on stage, you're like a twat. That's the first thing they'd say. You know what I mean? We get that stuff thrown at you, bottles of piss thrown at you.
Sounds like Blackpool.
Yes. Right. So it's the worst venues you can imagine. So these are the sorts of venues I was performing at. So just to give you an insight of what they were like. So I'm sat in the audience, I'm doing a Q&A routine, I've asked nobody in the room to write anything down about anybody that's deceased. The reason being is I don't want to bring up any negative emotion. At the same time, I'm not a medium, right? So the woman that I wanted to keep getting like an in-house booking off wrote down, is my brother happy in heaven? That's what she wrote.
Oof.
And I'm like, I can't answer this question, right? So it comes up on stage, and I'm like, this is the question that's going to get me the booking. So how do I answer this as tactfully as possible? So I feel straight away this question's of a taboo nature. It's one that I said don't ask. And I'm going to be 100% honest, I can't give you an answer, but that doesn't matter because you already know the answer. In your heart, you already know what this answer is. Can you focus on the person that's involved in this particular thing? And I just tried to reveal, little bits of information that made it feel like I was picking up on it, but I don't know the answer. This is not coming from beyond the grave, this is coming from you, right? Anyway, so I said to her, can I ask who this is about? And she said, my brother. And you can see she's getting upset at this point. So this is like a bar full of people, and obviously everybody else in the room knew that her brother had died in like a fire, and I didn't even know this. So I'm trying to be really careful and tactful about how I go about it. And this drunk guy just stands up and says, did your brother manage to make himself a fish finger sandwich before he burnt to death? She jumps off the stage and she smashes a glass over his head. The next thing I know, like, her family jump on his family, and this entire bar just erupts into a brawl. And I'm stood on stage now like, shall I recess? What? So this gives you an insight into the type of bars that I was performing in, right? So if I come across as being fairly burly or straightforward with people, you'll notice that my instructions are on point. And the reason that they're on point is because if I turn my back for a second, they're doing something I don't want them to do.
There's no room.
There's no room for this sort of stuff. You turn your back and you say, take the top card off and look at it. They'd sprinkle the rest of the cards around the room and just put one in the pocket. They were like that. You give them a chance to run awry and they'd run awry, and nothing were impressive. So let's say that I said to you, you're thinking of a couple of people. The first one you thought of was probably a female, but then you're thinking of a male now. They'd go no, and the audience would go boo. So you couldn't even miss on a slight thing. It always had to be hit. This was the Jerry Springer type audiences, That's Jeremy Kyle, Jeremy Springer type audiences. So I used to use, and you loved this when I was telling you about this when we were having a drink, I used to use hecklers as predictions in my show.
That's so good.
Right, I used to use hecklers as predictions. So what I'd do is I'd use Disposable Colour by Max Maven, and I'd throw it out. So this paper ball would go out, somebody would stand up, do you want to throw it again? Or they'd always throw it again, so we're sceptical. And
this to me makes the whole lecture worth it, like just this little nugget right here.
So I've got something on the edge of the table, and I'd be talking and I'd say, how many people believe it's possible to tell the future? No one would put their hands up, right? And I'd say, I believe it is. If you could take the factors and variables into account in any given situation, you can ultimately predict anything. And as you say anything, you'd knock this thing off, right? Something that wouldn't break, you'd knock it off. And you always knew who the dick were going to be in the room, right? So you'd clocked him earlier on, and he'd go, hey, you didn't see that coming, did you? And you'd say, okay. He said, by my watch, I make it about 8:45. Do we all have the same time? They'd look down and they'd go, yes, right? And you'd say, I threw a paper ball to you, can you open it up? And they'd open it up and it says, at 8:45 tonight, the guy in the blue tracksuit will stand up and shout, you didn't see that coming, did you? And I'd say, if you take into account the factors and variables surrounding any given situation, you can in fact predict the future, right?
Now everybody shuts up.
Right, and that's it, and everybody, you're one step ahead of everybody.
You're
right?
done.
And
No more hecklers now.
But if they never shouted anything out, then that never came into it, right?
That's
I just move on. And all I'd do is just make sure I did it round about the same time at every show that I were doing, right? And that were it. It just, as simple as that.
So great.
And so the question you asked me were about, what were it? I don't remember. I've gone off on a tangent so far.
Yeah, I don't even remember.
I have a question.
Oh.
So some people go through life and never reach their full potential, you know, and some people they never figure out what they're supposed to do. When did you figure out in your life that you were supposed to do this?
Everybody figures out what they're supposed to do, they just don't do it. So whatever dream you had when you were a kid, whether it to be a Power Ranger, to be a princess, whatever you wanted to be when you were a kid that you pushed to the back of your mind and let life get in the way is what you always wanted to do, you just never did. And I'm just one of those people that the reason that I tell so many empathetic stories in my set, and I've not talked about it today because I've rammed it down people's throats for a long time, because that's what I am an advocate of, is stories and making every moment beautiful and every moment count. That's to me what's important. That's what counts, is making that experience personal and making it something that's worth their time. And I knew what I wanted to do when I was a kid. And I think that if you want to be a guitar player when you're a kid and you love it for 6 months, the reason that you give it up is not because you don't love it anymore, it's just because you never realised how much work it was going to take to put into it, and you forget about it and you move on to something else. But secretly, when you watch people playing guitar for the rest of your life, you always wanted to be that good. You always wanted to be that amazing. You know, you always wanted to be able to impress people the way that they're impressing people. And the grass is always greener on the other side. Right? It's always greener on the other side. I wish I could sing like Chris sings.
I wish I could play guitar like this guy.
And you see, so the grass is always greener on the other side, and that's what it is. The grass is always greener on the other side. So you always know what you want to be. And if you can be anything, don't worry about what anybody else says. I'm going to be 100% honest, you know. I go through bouts of underconfidence. I'm not always confident. It's impossible to be always confident. I go through bouts where I feel sad. I go through bouts where I feel depressed. You know, I struggle to find love because I'm traveling all the time, and because I don't get. You know, I have a little boy at home that's 7 years old, and he lives with my ex, and I'm in Hollywood. I lose my phone, so I lose my contact number for my kid, and then I get on a plane to Sacramento. Sorry, I'm not sniffling. I get on a plane to Sacramento and they take my bag and I say, is it going to be safe? Because they took it off me on the plane. I'm not used to that happening. Yeah, I'll be fine. It's a short flight. Smashed my $3,000 laptop to smithereens. So my only communication with my little boy back at home is gone. That's it. And if anybody's a parent, leaving your kid for long periods of time, it's heartbreaking, you know. And everything, and then I get bitten by a spider. So everything goes against sometimes you in life. And lesser men had quit and said, this is it, this is the end of it. And I get periods where I don't want to talk to anybody. I took a break 6 months back. I took a break because I'd taken on so much. I were out shopping with my nan. I lived with my nan. I never had a mum or dad, and I grew up with my nan. And I were out shopping with my gran, and my gran should be the vulnerable one out of the pair of us, and I collapsed. I just collapsed outright, passed out, and my gran had to drag me out of the store to get me air. I got into an ambulance, I was taken out, and I had scans and a lot of other stuff. And a lot of people don't know this. And I was really poorly. And I was waking up in the morning with 1,000 emails, 1,000 Facebook messages on the Magic Cafe. And when I wasn't responding to them, because I tried to respond to everybody that messages me, it got too much. And then my social life got in the way, and I'd say to somebody, I'll be there at 2 o'clock, and then something had happened, a message would pop up, and I'd have to deal with this. And then I was letting this person down. And my life got to the point where if I wasn't letting this person down, I was letting that person down. If I wasn't letting this person down, I was letting that person down. And I physically felt sick. I stopped eating. I started taking on too much work. I looked at my calendar and I double booked myself. I was supposed to be in Holland and Paris at the exact same time, because on paper it didn't look like much, but when I looked back down, so times are testing all the time with this stuff, and it's all about just taking a step back and recalibrating and coming back. I've never said that I'm retiring. I said that in Penguin, if I managed to take off the system that I wanted to help people, I'd do that, and that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to do that, but I'm not at that point in my life yet. And I ultimately, this is my job. I have to travel. I love it, but I don't love it for. This lecture for me is great. It's great because I get to talk about what I love, but that's not the greatest thing about it. The greatest thing is that I get to spend time with, new faces. I get to spend time talking to cool guys. I meet new people. I get an insight into their life. They get an insight into mine, and I'm always willing to be open and share stuff. And it's about making connections. I met Chris, I met Dan Madison, and Gianni Vox and other friends, Ben Seawood and Michael Murray and Atlas Brookings and Mark Shandow. A load of people that as a kid, I never really had friends. I had one friend, and no matter what, my best friend Tom, no matter what happened, I always just went with him, did whatever we had to do. And I were a scruff, I were a hobos. That's what they used to call me, a scruff, because I never had the best clothes. I used to get hand-me-down clothes from my auntie. The only people that I cared about were like the close relatives, like my granddad, my auntie, my nan, my auntie, and my granddad died. So all these things knock me for six all the time. And I've always known what I wanted to do, but I always, right up until 2021, used excuses to not do it, to try and fit in with everybody else because I felt I were different. And it might, it might not just be in the sense of being a mentalist, it might be anything. If you feel different, embrace that. Don't worry about what anybody else's opinion is. Don't worry about what anybody else is thinking. Don't worry about what anybody else is going to say. Do what you want to do, and don't be scared of just letting go and admitting. And I'm scared all the time. I'm a fairly big guy, I'm tattooed, but I go through patches where I'm thinking to myself, wow, where am I going next? What's happening for me next? Wow, this is really snowballing, things are going out of control. I'm flying around to California to give a lecture and I don't know what I'm going to talk about. Like, what have I talked about before? I've got to frantically go back over stuff I've talked about. What questions are people going to ask me? Are they going to be unsavoury? But you've just got to roll with the punches, and if you want to do something, don't let anything get in your way. Don't let anything stop you. No matter how much something kicks you, punches you, stops you, just get back up, keep doing it, and just stay on track and live the life that you want to live. You don't have to be the richest person, but just aim to be the happiest person and be the person that makes the other people around him as happy or her happy as possible. Because that's all ultimately life's about. It doesn't matter if you're living paycheck to paycheck. What difference does it make? Well, it doesn't matter if you're struggling. If you're struggling with a smile on your face, that's better than having money in your pocket and being sad. And so ultimately that's what it's about. And the only thing that really pisses me off when I see comments saying that he's only doing this for the money, he's only doing that for the money. Do you know what? If you realised how much I got paid for stuff, I'd bet you that the loss of my phone and the loss of my laptop is a lot less than I'm being paid for this lecture, right? But I'm here and I'm doing it because I want to share my passion with the world. I want to sit and I want to stare into this camera at people, and I want to give them the gift of knowing a little bit about me. And and even if I get talked about after I'm gone, in a sense, I've made history in some way, and I've made history just being me. So to answer your question is just live the life that you want to live. You already know what it is that you want to do. And if you don't know what it is that you want to do, think back to what it is that you wanted to do and just get back on that train. You might have deviated off that path, but ultimately at the end, do you want to wake up and go, wow, I wish I'd done stuff differently, and then go to sleep and then gamble on where you're going to be after that? Or do you want to sit there and say, this was one hell of a roller coaster ride and I wouldn't have changed it for the world? And then that's it. You can sleep peacefully, and that's pretty much it. So if you ever want to do something, just do it and don't be scared of what anybody else thinks.
Beautifully said.
On that note, I don't think we could have ended this lecture on a better, higher, and more amazing note. Peter Turner, thank you so much.
Thank you.
So that's it for us, folks. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you've enjoyed this very special and memorable At the Table experience, and hopefully we'll see you soon. Make sure to check out Peter Turner's upcoming release, STEM system. Surely, as you've seen today, if you've watched this, you know that you will not be disappointed. So thank you once again for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next time.